Their first official engagement since Prince Harry's controversial memoir was published. In fact, his ghostwriter has been forced into defending some of the inaccuracies in that. What sort of reaction do you think the royal couple will receive, though? And a British aid worker has been killed in Ukraine, reports suggest. A Russian mercenary group has claimed its fighters have found the body of one of two British aid workers reported missing in eastern Ukraine in recent days. We'll get the latest on that with our home and security editor, Mark White. But, of course, I want your thoughts this afternoon. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We've got Rishi Sunak when it comes to him stopping the NHS crisis and stopping the small boats crisis. But I think the big one today, ladies and gentlemen, get your views coming in. Tee off, why don't you? Should Harry stay away from the coronation? But now, see your latest headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 2 minutes past 3. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The government says a meeting between the Health Secretary and health leaders was good and constructive. It comes as new NHS England data shows ambulances took an hour and a half on average to respond to call-outs in December. That's the longest response times on record. Details on pay weren't discussed at today's meetings, but Steve Barclay was warned he must address the workforce crisis. Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry told GB News talks are the only way forward.
Much better, surely, is to use the system that we already have, which is that people negotiate the basic safety levels, and you can see nurses running off picket lines in order to go and help when there is a particular crisis. That's the reality. That's what's always happened. And we know that even if they do pass this legislation, it's not going to help with the current situation. The current situation can only be helped if the government stops playing games, sits down and talks to the unions and negotiates a deal.
Meanwhile, 100,000 civil servants will strike next month on February the 1st. The decision follows another meeting with the government held today. One the Public and Commercial Services Union has called a total farce. Union leaders met to discuss the ongoing dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. It follows weeks of walkouts, including the strike by Border Force staff over Christmas. Union leaders have said more money will have to be offered in order to prevent further industrial action. And travel disruption continues for passengers in London today, with strikes on the newly opened Elizabeth line. Members from Transport Salaried Staffs Association and Prospect have walked off the job over pay and pensions. The two unions rejected a 4.4% increase this year. Transport for London has warned of short-notice cancellations and changes. The Northern Ireland Secretary has said there's still a way to go to resolve the row over the Northern Ireland Protocol. A warning, the following contains flashing images. The Irish Premier and Labour leader have met political parties at Stormont to discuss the post-Brexit trade rules on the Irish land border. The DUP has been blocking the formation of a government until the protocol's altered or removed. Russian mercenaries are claiming they've found a body belonging to one of the two British aid workers missing in Ukraine. The Wagner Group hasn't specified which of the two has reportedly been found, but did say they had documents belonging to both. GB News is unable to verify the claims. The Foreign Office says it's supporting the families of Andrew Bagshaw and Christopher Parry while they await more information. That as Ukrainian authorities say Russia has attacked a maternity hospital in the port city of Kherson. Video footage shows the aftermath of the strike with heavy damage to windows and offices. There have been no confirmed deaths. It comes after President Zelensky praised the resilience of his forces in the eastern Donbass region. Back here, an energy watchdog says more than 3 million people in the UK ran out of credit on their prepayment meters last year. Citizens Advice says more than 2 million were being disconnected at least once a month, leaving them unable to turn the heating on or cook a meal. The charity is calling for a total ban on the forced installation of prepayment meters until new protections are introduced. And the annual income needed for people to have a minimum standard of living when they retire has jumped by nearly a fifth in a year. The Pensions and Lifetime Savings Association says the lowest possible lifestyle cost for a single person has risen by 18% to almost £13,000. For a couple, it's gone up 19% to almost £20,000. More women will be able to get checked for breast cancer after the government announced £10 million in funding towards NHS screening units. The initiative will make screening more accessible for thousands of women, with 29 new units being set up. The investment will also see upgrades to ultrasound and X-rays to better detect cancer using new and improved software. Winds of up to 60 miles per hour are expected in parts of the UK today. A yellow weather warning for heavy rain in Wales and southwest England is also in place until 5 this afternoon. The Met Office is warning of possible power cuts, dangerous driving conditions and delays to public transport. And King Charles, the Prince and Princess of Wales, have appeared in public for the first time since the release of the Duke of Sussex's memoir, Spare. William and Kate made a visit to Merseyside, where they opened the Royal Liverpool University Hospital. They're also meeting with health workers and mental health staff to thank them for their efforts during the winter months. Meanwhile, King Charles has been in Aberdeenshire visiting the Aboyne and Mid-Deeside community shed. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back to Patrick.
OK, welcome aboard, everybody. Let's crack straight on, shall we? He's been in office for 100 days and the Prime Minister has vowed not to let you down. During his first party political broadcast, Rishi Sunak pledged to reduce the NHS waiting list, blaming the pandemic for creating huge backlogs in the health service. He also reiterated that the Conservatives were taking decisive action on tackling illegal immigration. Let's just have a quick look at a bit of that broadcast now, shall we? Come on.
Under my leadership, the government's priorities are your priorities, the people's priorities. Together, we're putting your needs above politics to repair the economy, strengthen our NHS, tackle illegal migration, and restore pride in the United Kingdom, our great country.
Yeah, I mean, once more with feeling, Rishi? Anyone? No? Just me? All right, well, let's go now to GB News' political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who's in Westminster and hopefully isn't going to talk to us like a robot. Darren, what do you make of Rishi Sunak reiterating his top 5 priorities?
I don't think anyone's ever accused me of that. Quite the opposite in many ways, Patrick. Very good afternoon from a pretty miserable Westminster. Yeah. What do I think of it? You know, this is Rishi Sunak doing a party political broadcast. Was he pretty stilted? Yes, he was. He's never been terribly comfortable with reading order cues and staring down the barrel of a camera. He's actually much better face-to-face, and indeed probably getting better at Prime Minister's Question Time. In terms of these 5 pledges he's made that, frankly, will well decide whether he remains as Prime Minister after the next general election. Now, in some regards, actually, the big question is, what do these targets actually mean? So, for example, he's talked about halving inflation. Well, inflation is going to come down anyway, simply because of the fact that energy prices are coming down. It's down to 6.5% in the United States today, well down on where it was over a year ago. Let's look at the small migrant crisis in the English Channel. Again, what is the measure of success there? No one crossing the English Channel? I'm not entirely sure we're going to get to there. And then when it comes to the National Health Service, trying to clear that backlog. Now, let's start with some good news, and there is some good news for the government today. That is that 70,000 more elective treatments were delivered in December last year than compared to 2019, so that's pretty good news. And also that year-long waits are beginning to drop, down 4,000 from the month before. However, in the immediate term, things are pretty difficult, Patrick, to be frank, with the NHS. Yeah. When people say it's in crisis, you look at figures that we saw from the NHS today, you have to conclude it's pretty bad. If you have a heart attack or a stroke in the last couple of months, and you called an ambulance, the average length it took for that ambulance to arrive to you was an hour and a half. An hour and a half. It's meant to take 18 minutes. More than 50% of people turning up to A&E wait more than 4 hours. Accident and emergency wait more than 4 hours to get treated. And I think for all the political points and the potential aspirations and the success of maybe trying to achieve those targets, frankly, at the moment, what everyone here is focused on, and I suspect everyone at home, is trying to deal with the immediate term problems, and that is an NHS that really is struggling to cope this winter.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think it's pretty clear. He wants to start again, doesn't he? He wants to go, right, what happened before was before, this is me now, judge me from this moment in time. And, well, let's be honest, I suppose that's what he has to do. Still about 18 months, 2 years away from the next general election. If things do start to improve, then, yes, I suppose he got a chance. But, Darren, thank you very much, and hopefully find yourself somewhere dry. And that was not a stilted performance at all. It never is. Darren McCaffrey there, our political editor from a wet and windy Westminster. But joining me live now in our rather warm studio is former Labour Special Advisor and columnist Paul Richards. Paul, really appreciate you coming in. Now, where do you want to start when it comes to Rishi Sunak's first 100 days? Because, to be fair, Keir Starmer's first 100 days were pretty anonymous, weren't they? So at least Rishi is doing something.
Well, Starmer started off in the backdrop of the COVID pandemic, and he was lost to the public mind because we were all focused on other things. I mean, if you look at his record since then, he's done rather better. I thought Rishi's performance last night strangely unprofessional for a man who is supposed to be so slick.
Unprofessional?
Well, it felt to me like the work experience kid had wandered in front of the auto cue by mistake, you know, a bit like an A-level student.
It's the dull men's club at the moment, though, I think, for me, and I'm not just blindly defending Rishi. In fact, far from it. I think his performances in front of camera have been incredibly stilted, not inspiring whatsoever. Keir Starmer, to be fair, I don't think he exactly lights up a room, does he?
No, but I suppose, you know, if you were to become the Prime Minister, you do then get all of the panoply of support as PM, you get the red boxes and the cars and the international travel. Okay. Rishi seems to be diminished by becoming Prime Minister. Right. He seems to be less of an effective...
It is interesting. I do wonder if he'll grow into it. In terms of his priorities, they call it the top top 5 priorities. You can condense them into 3, basically. It's the economy, the NHS and migration.
The broadcast had 3, because that's all we can take for a...
Well, that's it, exactly. Yeah. But also, it's not top 5, just squish it down into 3. It's easier to remember anyway, isn't it? When it comes to the NHS, to start with, Rishi Sunak has got a tricky situation because we are hearing things like if you had a heart attack, I know a lot of our viewers and our listeners have been in situations with loved ones like this where they've called an ambulance, waited 90 minutes, sometimes the person has not survived that as well. GP appointments have been backing up, NHS waiting times have been backing up. So he's got to fix the NHS, which is in crisis. Do you think he's got any way of actually doing that?
Well, doing a broadcast isn't going to help. And the problem, you know, he goes on the telly to talk about the crisis, blaming it on the pandemic, by the way, but other health services are not in the same crisis as ours. Doesn't even mention the strikes in the NHS, you know, on the day when there was an actual ambulance drivers' strike going on. I thought that was an odd thing to do. Even the Daily Mail has pointed out that's a strange thing to do today. So that was odd. And then, of course, the other elephant in the room for him is his own use of the private sector. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but if you're the Prime Minister, you would sort of hope that you knew how the NHS worked and involved yourself.
Can I just say there's something a little bit disingenuous about all of this, Paul, because there's a lot of media companies out there, and I happen to know some of the left-wing ones as well, where they give all of their employees private healthcare, and so they might be, for example, saying things on the front page like "We are with you" to a load of nurses, but they're not with them in A&E.
But the British government doesn't provide private healthcare to its employees, does it? I mean, if you're the leader of the nation, you're supposed to use the national...
But I mean, if he had a heart... But the point is...
So how does
he
understand the experience you've just described of people waiting? He wouldn't need
no,
to
sorry,
wait,
is it not a little bit of a misconception, this? Because if he had a heart attack, he would go to the NHS. He wouldn't call Bupa, would he? So presumably he would have some experience. It's if he wanted an elective surgery. Well, yeah. If he wanted some elective surgery, then he's taking the pressure off the NHS.
Sure. But the broader point I'm making is he's out of touch. And there's experiences that your viewers will experience of not being able to get a GP's appointment, not knowing whether an ambulance will turn up or not for their granny when she's had a fall. You know, he doesn't understand those things, so he doesn't experience them. So the substance of last night's broadcast was very much, trust me, look at me, my dad was a doctor. But people will be asking, OK, but what are you going to do? What's the substance of it? It was not particularly well spun, as we've discussed, but there wasn't much substance underneath it either.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've had a lot of people banging on about what their dads do. Someone's dad was a bus driver and all of this, and
Right.
you know,
Backstory, isn't it? We need to know the backstory.
This is personal for me. This is personal. I mean, yeah, good grief. But there we go. I'm waiting for the day that someone pipes up and goes, "My dad was a convict," and all of this stuff, and see how well that goes.
I don't know who my dad was.
I don't know. I've never met my dad. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would probably go down quite well, actually. When it comes to migration, the small boats crisis that's going on in the Channel at the moment, he's absolutely right to identify as, when in terms of passing the pub test, the vast majority of the British people have got a strong view on that one way or the other.
They do.
What he wants to do is try to create a multi-pronged approach. Do you see him fixing the small boats crisis? Because that was the only area of jeopardy in his 3 points plan. NHS waiting lists will probably come down anyway. Inflation will
Why do you say that?
come
Why
down.
will they? Unless he does something about it.
Well, they are probably going to be on the turn because he can manipulate those figures now because we're in the belly of the beast, i.e. winter. So as of today, right, the waiting list. So he's probably on relatively safe ground there.
Fingers crossed.
Probably on safe ground there. The bit of jeopardy for me was the small boats crisis.
Yes.
And if he doesn't get that right, then I think the British public is going to have to make a really strong choice there.
I mean, there's a bit of public policy that is not hard to fix, actually. You know, you can do things to choke off the supply, you know, tackle the gangs, do more cooperation with the French, all the things that he probably doesn't quite want to do. My question would be, why is that one of his top 3, out of everything going wrong with the country, priorities? Why not fixing the rail system that is broken and people can't get to work? You know, what about our schools? You know, the education system. It's a strange thing to pick out. I mean,
Do you think?
A cynic might suggest it was a little bit of a dog whistle rather than a serious public policy.
Do you think, I suppose the counter-argument to that would be, frankly, that you're massively out of touch? Because I think the vast...
I live on the south coast. You know, I'm very much in tune with the fact that there are hotels filled with people from Sudan and everywhere else. It's a very live issue, of course it is. But I'm saying, is it really a top 3 issue?
I think for a lot of people in this country now, when they see that... Well, you could argue the trains
in
are becoming...
Manchester, you can't get to London because there's only, you know, one service once in a blue moon. Isn't that more important? I think so.
Well, I think that things are changing, aren't they? And that's one of the reasons why negotiations with the trains aren't going particularly well at the minute, is because it's a diminishing service. A lot of people working from home, and clearly, if they're refusing to accept a decent pay offer, there may be...
But it's another thing that's just going wrong. The country isn't working. You can't get a passport.
So what would
going up,
you don't think genuinely that Rishi Sunak was right to include the small boats crisis or illegal immigration?
I can see why he would include it politically, Patrick, but I'm not sure if.
But you don't
for
actually
the good
think...
of the nation. If I was advising him, I would say, let's sort out food prices.
Well, that is
before
interesting.
We sort out the small boats.
That is interesting because, in your capacity, and I can't help but wonder. This is very briefly because I'm getting shouts at Paul, but you were a former Labour special advisor, right? And I can't help but wonder whether or not this is one of the reasons why a lot of people don't want to vote Labour, is because they genuinely don't feel like that party cares about illegal immigration, and it sounds like you don't.
I do care about it deeply. I want to stop it, and I want people to be well looked after. But I think also, when you go to the shops this weekend and you can't afford the food, that's a bigger issue. OK,
fair enough. All right, thank you very much, and good to have you in the studio. Thank you very much. OK, that's Paul Richards there, former Labour Special Advisor, of course, and columnist. He's reacting from the Labour side, from the left side, to what Rishi Sunak had to say, which was last night's broadcast. We were treated, weren't we, to a rather robotic Rishi Sunak. Look, hey, if you think I'm being out of order here on Rishi Sunak, then get in touch with me, gbviews at gbnews.uk. I know a lot of people think, well, he deserves a bit of time. Of course he deserves a little bit of time, but it was a bit stilted, if you ask me. But we're moving away from that now. We're focusing on one specific element of it, actually, which is the NHS, because NHS figures released earlier today show the number of people waiting more than 12 hours in A&E departments in England from a decision to admit to actually being, well, admitted, has risen above 50,000 for the first time, which is a pretty shocking number, isn't it? The Vice President of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine says that the news could lead to more patient deaths as they wait to be seen, obviously. Well, the news comes just a day after ambulance workers walked out in a dispute over pay, and today the Health Secretary met with medical leaders to discuss pay and concerns. A Department of Health spokesperson branded the meeting constructive, which is nice, but a union leader said that there was no commitment to extra pay, and this is for doctors, OK? So joining me now is Dr Richard Votary, former BMA GP Committee Chair. Great to have you on the show. Thank you very much. We're hearing a lot about workers at the lower end of the spectrum in the NHS, as it were, lower end of the pay spectrum. I mean, so you've got your nurses, you've got your paramedics, you've got your NHS call handlers. I don't reckon there's a huge amount of sympathy for doctors in this economic climate to get a pay rise as well. Is there?
Well, doctors, as with other healthcare workers, are working harder than they've ever done before and are really concerned about the service that they're able to provide to their patients. We don't want to see patients waiting long periods of time for procedures. We don't want them to be waiting unnecessarily in A&E, and we don't want them to be waiting in hospital to be discharged into social care. We do need the government to act on this and act very quickly.
OK, I need you to educate me, not for the first time, of course, but I do need you to educate me on this. Why would paying doctors more help solve waiting times in A&E?
Well, we've got a real crisis in our workforce at the moment, not only in training more doctors, but crucially in retaining doctors. And one of the issues about retaining doctors is treating them fairly. We've seen for the last decade doctors' pay increase in relative terms compared with inflation. And so we do need to actually restore that pay to levels comparable with 2008, 2010, because without that, we won't attract sufficient doctors to work and stay in our NHS.
Right, Dr. Richard, what is the pay? What are you paid?
Our doctors are paid very different levels of pay depending on.
OK, well, give me. Go on, just take me through the spectrum then, because we need to know, don't we, really? And also, as well, pension contributions. Got a decent pension?
Well, again, one of the issues relating to pensions is the government have pledged to try and resolve some of the pensions issues relating to doctors' pay and pensions, but have yet failed to do so. And so when doctors do work additional hours and work excessively, what is happening is often they're faced with huge tax bills, which acts as a disincentive to doing that additional work. So
now,
we do need to
this is a good
point. Our doctors are paid fairly. But there is an issue here, particularly with junior doctors who are starting on sort of very low levels of pay, and which is actually much less in relative terms than it was 10 years ago.
Now, this is a really interesting point that you've made there, because I don't think enough gets made of this. Is there a disincentive for GPs especially to do the kind of overtime that we need them to do in order to get people to see their GPs in this current climate? Because actually, if you do, you move up into a higher tax bracket and you get taxed to high heaven as a result of that. Because if that is the case, whilst that is very unfortunate for the GPs, what I think a lot of people in the middle of a cost of living crisis will be hearing now is, oh, cry me a river, you've moved into a higher tax bracket, you're on loads of money.
Yes, this isn't just about GPs, this is about senior doctors and other senior healthcare workers as well. And this is a tax issue that the government and the Treasury need to address. When Jeremy Hunt was in his previous role as chair of the Health Select Committee, he identified it as a major problem, and yet as Chancellor has not yet been able to fix this. We do need them to take action, because we do need to enable doctors to have every incentive to work those hours that they're able to when they can.
I do understand that, and I can actually, I'm not against, obviously, things like wealth creation. Just, sorry, very finally, very quickly, it's hopefully a bit of a yes or no answer. If a junior doctor gets a student loan to train and get a degree in this country and then decides to go and work abroad, do they have to pay that student loan back here?
No, but most doctors who go to work abroad come back to the NHS and work in the NHS.
Yeah, but increasingly they're going abroad, aren't they? And that's a problem, because the British taxpayer is training up junior doctors who then go and work abroad for more money and don't pay the taxpayer back. Isn't that right?
Well, similarly, we get large numbers of international medical graduates coming in to work in our NHS for whom we're really dependent on. So it does work both ways.
Because all the British ones are leaving, aren't they?
Well, we need to do more to retain all doctors in our NHS. And we need to
some people might say that's a little bit cheeky.
And pay them fairly.
But isn't that not a bit cheeky, using the British, academic system and taxpayers' money to go and get your degree and then jetting off to Australia and not paying us back? That is a bit cheeky.
I don't think so. We lose the skills of those doctors when they come back with the benefit to the whole of the NHS and to the whole of our population.
So we're relying on them coming back. All right. OK, Dr Richard, thank you very much. I could talk to you all day about this. I must say I enjoyed that back and forth. Dr Richard Vorci, their former BMA GP committee chair. Right, OK, you're with me, Patrick Christys on GB News. Classic, we're only 25 minutes in. I've already massively overrun. Sorry, production team. Back to business as usual for the Royals, though. Prince and Princess of Wales visit Merseyside this afternoon on their first official engagement since Prince Harry's controversial memoir was published. What will the reaction be? And I want to hear from you. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Should Harry swerve the coronation? I'll be back in a tip.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
OK, people, welcome back. The Prince and Princess of Wales have stepped out on their first official visit since Harry's explosive memoir hit the shelves. Prince William and Catherine look to present a united front as they open the new Royal Liverpool University Hospital. The King has also been in Aberdeenshire today, and Prince Harry's book, which became the fastest-selling work of non-fiction on its first day of release, included details of physical fights between the brothers and a fractious friendship between Meghan and Kate. Let's go live now to GB News' royal reporter Cameron Walker, who's in Liverpool. Cameron, thank you very, very much. Now, obviously, I want to talk to you a little bit about the coronation and what may or may not happen there. But first and foremost, you are in Liverpool. What's happened where you are?
I am, Patrick. Well, despite the Sussex storm that's brewed due to Prince Harry's memoir dropping this week and the quite literal storm that swept through the west of the United Kingdom and here in Liverpool, it was very windy and rainy earlier. The Prince and Princess of Wales have been focusing on their duties as working members of the royal family. First of all, they were at the Royal Liverpool University Hospital, where they have been thanking staff for the work they've been doing over the winter months. They've also met some mental health workers there. One nurse even asked the royal couple for a selfie, and they were more than happy to oblige. They're opening the new buildings here at the hospital. It's the biggest in the country, actually, which has 100% rooms with en-suites and single bedrooms, which is thought to kind of make the patient's experience a lot better than it would elsewhere. Now, elsewhere, they have also visited a mental health charity specifically for young people and because to shine a spotlight on the provision for mental health of young people. But of course, Patrick, there is a big elephant in the room, and that is Harry's memoir, Spare.
Yes.
In that memoir, of course, there was this text exchange between Will and Kate. Harry alleges that Kate made Meghan cry from what was said in those texts. He also alleges that his own brother physically attacked him in 2019. Kensington Palace have not responded to any of the allegations made in that memoir. They have been focused very much on the engagements here in Liverpool today as working members of the royal family. As you mentioned in your link as well, the King was in Aberdeen. He was visiting a organisation which helps men with rural loneliness, and from the pictures up in Aberdeen, he was pretty smiley. There was lots of members of the public willing to greet him with showing them their pets, etc. So all in all, it was a day out and about for the working members of the royal family, carrying on with their duties. Of course, it's only a few months until the King's coronation, and there is a big question mark over whether or not Harry and Meghan are going to be attending.
Yes, indeed. Well, there is a massive question mark. People close, allegedly, to the royal family, I suppose, saying that they would not be welcome there. Some people, Cameron would say, they should maybe do the decent thing and just swerve it.
Yeah, in the papers today, there are reports that that Princess Anne's family and Prince Edward's family think it's going to be a pretty bad idea if Harry and Meghan are invited to the coronation, because it would take the whole, narrative away from the King's coronation, away from the crowning, this sacred Christian ceremony, which is for the people of the United Kingdom to almost officially welcome their new monarch. It would take it away from that and put it right back on to what some people dub the Duke and Duchess of Montecito. There is a bit of a precedent for not inviting the royal couple. Just before Queen Elizabeth II's coronation in 1953, the former King Edward VIII, who of course abdicated the throne in favour of his brother, who was the late Queen's dad, he actually released a memoir just before the coronation, which of course could have been a big distraction, and it was the British government, Winston Churchill, who was Prime Minister at the time, who told the former King he wasn't welcome. So It looks like it's the government, the government's idea whether or not to invite Harry and Meghan. Is not the King's decision.
Well, that might actually be quite handy for the King. But of course, Harry, bless him, in light of his massive personal security concerns, if we, the taxpayer, can't afford his security, it's a cost of living crisis, can't afford his security, it'd be a shame if he wasn't safe here for him and he wasn't able to attend. Cameron Walker, thank you very much, our royal correspondent out there pounding the pavements of Liverpool, where Kate and William are just doing their thing, serenely, calmly, carrying on, opening a hospital, service to the British public. That's how it's done, Harry. Anyway, you're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Coming up, a Russian mercenary group has claimed its fighters have found the body of one of two British aid workers who were reported missing in eastern Ukraine in recent days. Interesting development, this, and we will have a look through that with our very own Home and Security editor, Mark White. And reports today that ministers are looking to give unemployed over 50s a complete tax exemption if they return to work. The government is concerned that millions of people have opted out of the labour market since the pandemic. How would you feel about over 50s getting a tax break? Also, as well, people who can claim disability benefits whilst they work as well, which seems a little bit strange for me as a taxpayer. Anyway, get your views coming in, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Now, though, here's your headlines.
It's 3:34. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The government says a meeting between the Health Secretary and health leaders was constructive. It comes as new NHS England data shows ambulances took an hour and a half on average to respond to call-outs in December. That's the longest response times on record. Details on pay weren't discussed at today's meetings, but Steve Barclay was warned he must address the workforce crisis. Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry told GB News talks are the only way forward.
Much better, surely, is to use the system that we already have, which is that people negotiate the basic safety levels, and you can see nurses running off picket lines in order to go and help when there is a particular crisis. Now, that's the reality. That's what's always happened. And we know that even if they do pass this legislation, it's not going to help with the current situation. The current situation can only be helped if the government stops playing games, sits down and talks to the unions and negotiates a deal.
The Northern Ireland Secretary has said there's still a way to go to resolve the row over the Northern Ireland Protocol, and warning the following images contain flashing images.
The Irish Premier and Labour leader met political parties at Stormont today to discuss the post-Brexit trade rules on the Irish land border. The DUP has been blocking the formation of a government until the protocol's altered or removed. Russian mercenaries are claiming they've found a body belonging to one of the 2 British aid workers missing in Ukraine. The Wagner Group hasn't specified which of the 2 has reportedly been found, but did say they had documents belonging to both Brits. GB News is unable to verify the claims. The Foreign Office says it's supporting the families of Andrew Bagshaw and Christopher Parry while they await more information. Singer Lee Ryan has been found guilty of racially aggravated assault. The incident happened on a British Airways flight last July. Ealing Magistrates Court heard the former member of Blue also asked a female flight attendant to kiss him. The former pop star's apologised for his behaviour. And the Prince and Princess of Wales have appeared in public for the first time since the release of the Duke of Sussex's memoir, Spare. Prince William and Kate have been in Merseyside to officially open the new Royal Liverpool University Hospital. The 2 have been meeting healthcare and mental health staff, thanking them for their ongoing work throughout the winter months. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere. Patrick will be back in just a moment.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
OK, loads still to come in the back end of this particular hour. Let's start with the fact that a Russian mercenary group has claimed that its fighters have found the body of one of 2 British aid workers reported missing in eastern Ukraine in recent days. The Foreign Office has told GB News that it is aware of the claim by the Wagner Group and is supporting the families of Andrew Bagshaw and Christopher Parry while they await more information. The 2 men were believed to be heading for the embattled town of Soledar in eastern Ukraine to help evacuate civilians when they disappeared over the weekend. Our security editor, Mark White, has more.
The battle around the eastern town of Soledar is intense, with claims and counterclaims over exactly who is now in control here. In truth, we still don't really know. What is horribly clear, though, is that there is very little of this town left. Ukrainian drone footage showing most of the neighbourhoods here have been obliterated. It's against this backdrop that British aid workers Andrew Bagshaw and Christopher Parry disappeared in recent days. And now Russian mercenaries, the Wagner Group, claim to have recovered the body of one of the men in the area. There's no independent verification of this, or indeed whether it is one of the missing volunteers.
So, Merry Christmas.
Over recent months, Christopher Parry has documented his work in helping evacuate and provide aid for the area's elderly and infirm. The Foreign Office said it was aware of the reports and is supporting the families of both men while they await more information. The Wagner Group is spearheading the operation to try to take control of Soledar. Other Ukrainian drone footage shows what are believed to be Wagner fighters attempting to advance while clearly coming under fire. Russia is desperate to prevail here after many weeks in which Ukrainian counter-offensives seem to have made all the key gains. With Moscow determined to regain momentum, Russia's top general in Ukraine has been replaced. Just 3 months after Sergei Surovkin on the left here took charge, he's now been replaced by the man on the right, Chief of the General Staff, Valery Gerasimov. Many analysts believe the move isn't just indicative of the need for a change of military strategy on the ground, but points to a degree of political infighting in Moscow. Throughout Ukraine, many communities are continuing to come under heavy Russian bombardment. Here in the southern city of Kherson, images show a maternity hospital which was struck, causing a number of injuries, according to Ukrainian officials. And in the months ahead, the fighting across this battered nation will only intensify as both Ukraine and Russia prepare for spring offensives. Mark White, GB News.
Mark White joins me in the studio right now. So Mark, how confident are they that they've actually got this particular chap's body?
Well, the signs don't look good. Clearly, the Wagner Group, they're a notorious group, and you wouldn't necessarily trust what they say in the best of days, but they have on a Telegram messaging site on their account there posted passports of the two men, Andrew Bagshaw and Christopher Parry, showing those passports and other documentation. The claim was recovered on the body that their fighters have found. What they haven't said is which one of the two men they believe that might be. So clearly there'll be back channels that are operational there to try to get some verification of whether this is one of the two missing aid workers. But a terrible time for their families back here in the UK and in New Zealand, where Mr Bagshaw's family is, who are watching events and being supported by staff from the Foreign and Commonwealth Office.
No, of course. And why is there so much fierce fighting about what appears to be a relatively small salt mine-based town?
Yeah, well, the reason this town is important in this story is because it's where these two aid workers were heading. The job that they were doing out there, not involved in the fighting, we're told, but were involved in trying to help evacuate the elderly and infirm from these embattled towns. They were heading to Soledar because it is the scene of such fierce fighting. There are residents there who are trapped in their homes and unable to leave, so that's what they've been doing to try to get them out. That fighting is continuing. The Wagner Group, the group of mercenaries who have posted these documents on their Telegram website and claim it's their fighters that found them, they are spearheading the Russian operation to try and take this town. Now, the reason it's important, it's not an important town really, 10,000 population. It's because the Russians just have not really had the momentum with them at all. In recent months, counter-offensives have been taking place by the Ukrainians. They seem to have had all the momentum. So psychologically, it would be very important to take Soledar. Strategically, there is some value there as well, because it's very near a strategically important city called Bakhmut, which is also an area of lots of fighting. So if they were to take Soledar, it would give them a strategic push towards Bakhmut as well.
Yeah, OK, fair enough. And no end in sight as well, then, presumably, for this particular conflict. And, of course, with it, no end in sight for British taxpayer pounds going over there as well.
No, well, the British government have said, Patrick, that they are committed to this fight for the long term as well, that they are going to match the efforts of billions of pounds that went from the UK to the Ukraine last year, this year as well.
Wow. So there we go. Look, Mark, thank you very, very much. Thank you for bringing us that package as well. I'm sure you'll be with us as any developments come in thick and fast. That's Mark White, there, our Home and Security Editor. Just bringing you the very latest about the fact that, yes, potentially a body found in the search of that missing British aid worker over there in Ukraine. And also, as well, we can see, can't we now, that there is no end in sight, very much so, no end in sight for British taxpayers' pounds going over there to help the fight in Ukraine. What do you make of that, ladies and gentlemen? Now, back to Rishi Sunak, who's been in office for 100 days, and he's on a mission to prove that he's the right man to lead the country. He's pledged to improve the economy, tackle migrants crossing the channel in small boats, and reduce the NHS waiting times. Let's listen now, actually, to how he plans to actually do that. So here he is during his first party political broadcast as Prime Minister. Take it away, Rishi.
Those difficult decisions also allowed us to give the NHS record resources. More funding, more doctors, more nurses. Every family worries about getting the NHS care they need for themselves, their parents, grandparents, or children. But COVID has done huge harm to the NHS. It's created massive backlogs, which we're working through. But Britain's heroic response to COVID shows that where the political will exists to really grip a problem, we can bring everyone together and achieve the unthinkable. That takes leadership, so I've immediately set in train a new approach and taken the best of our experience from fighting COVID to reduce NHS backlogs and get patients treated quicker. My dad was a doctor and my mum was a pharmacist. This is personal for me, and I'm determined to get the number of people on waiting lists falling, and I will not let you down.
OK, right, well, so Rishi Sunak there. Now, it does, I said it before, I'll say it again, does appear as though we might be being led by AI. I have yet to see a much more stilted broadcast than that particular one, completely devoid of personality, but maybe you feel as though he's got the substance, OK? So get in touch. We're going to go to emails shortly. Two things I wanted you to email about today, really. The first one was about whether or not you think that Prince Harry should swerve the coronation. That's in relation to the latest noises coming out of royal circles, which do appear to say he's not welcome there. Good. The other one, though, is Rishi Sunak's first 100 days. Has he impressed you yet? GBViews at GBnews.uk. Two top topics there, but we're moving on slightly now because Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor, joins me in the studio. Supermarket giants Tesco and Marks & Spencer recorded record trading over the Christmas period, despite that being in the middle of the cost of living crisis. Both retailers reported a growth in sales as higher prices on food drove up revenue. But the story isn't quite so peachy for online clothing seller ASOS, who've seen a fall in sales amongst delivery disruption and pulled purse strings. Joining me now is our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, with On the Money. So, Liam, are you saying I shouldn't have ordered that dress off ASOS?
But it suits you, Patrick.
It does.
Treat yourself.
Absolutely, only for Friday nights. Anyway, right, carry on. What you got?
So we talk about record sales, Tesco and M&S, two of our major retailers, of course. Tesco's the biggest retailer in Britain. They talk about record sales, but in the end, that's because we've had more inflation, so the actual number of pounds and pence that people are spending are up. And indeed, the numbers look pretty good. I can show you some on a graphic here, and radio listeners can bear with me. Overall UK sales for Tesco are up 5.3%, and their food sales were up 8.1%. These were in the few months in the run-up to Christmas. And Marks & Spencer too. Overall UK sales up 7.2%. And food sales up 6.3%. And they do look like fantastic numbers, Patrick. And how does that square with the cost of living crisis? Well, if you think about it, though, all those numbers I gave you were less than 10.9%. And 10.9% is the rate of inflation. So the actual value, the volume, as it were, of the goods and services that people are buying underneath those numbers is less because the growth is less than the rate of inflation. So the real value, as economists say, of the goods is actually going down. And this is what inflation does. It turns what look like good numbers into not so good numbers if you look under the bonnet, because the purchasing power of the pounds and pence that we earn, the pounds and pence in our bank accounts and in our purses and wallets, is less. So these figures look good. They are record figures in terms of the numbers of pounds and pence, but they are less in real terms than last year.
They are, but they're not catastrophic, are they?
No, not at all. Not at all. They're bearing up. But we can't say that this was a bumper Christmas. And in the end, I talked about food sales there. Food is a necessity. But if you look at Marks and Spencer's clothing and homeware, that was down by 25% because these are more discretionary spends. You talked about ASOS. Fashion is more of a discretionary spend. And this is the issue. Inflation hits the poorer hardest because they spend more of their money on those necessities like food, like fuel, filling up the car and the van, and those goods have gone up much, much faster than the headline rate of inflation, 10 or 11%.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as a slightly wider point there, we've been talking a lot about Rishi Sunak's statement that he made last night, his party political broadcast. Certain elements of that we'll be picking apart later on, the immigration side of it. We've done a bit on the NHS already. But yes, one of it is directly relevant to you, of course, which is the inflation side of things in sorting out our economy. What do you make of him?
Well, he gave this 5-point pledge last week in his opening speech of the new year, the day after Keir Starmer's opening speech of the new year. And I must say, I don't want to be too cynical, but I'm a journalist, so it's my job to be informed and sceptical. And as an informed sceptic, I would say the pledge to halve inflation by the end of the year is pretty much almost certainly going to happen anyway. It's a bit like saying, it's January now, I guarantee you, because of my actions, there will be more sunshine in June than in January.
There will be a full moon this month.
It strikes me that similarly with the waiting list pledge in terms of the NHS, because when you've got record waiting lists, because the NHS has been locked down, when the NHS isn't locked down anymore, then waiting lists still horrendously high, loads of human misery. I'm certainly not making light of it, and I'm not making light of the cost of living crisis. But these metrics are almost certain to improve as the year goes ahead, almost by mathematical inevitability. So I don't see these pledges as particularly, if I may say so, impressive.
Fair enough. Did you know his dad was a pharmacist?
He never mentions it.
He never goes on about it, does he? No, because the NHS...
should talk about that.
He should really raise that, actually, because now it really makes you think, doesn't it, that solving the NHS is personal to him. Yeah, it really is. Liam, thank you very much. Liam Halligan there, economics and business editor. With On the Money, right, I'm going to delve into the terrifying world of my inbox, by the way, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Lots of you have been giving your hot takes, despite me not asking for it, which is weird, on Steve Barclay meeting with the BMA, who represent doctors. I think this might be in relation to the doctors' chat I had earlier on. We had a former GP representative on, didn't we? And he was basically saying, woe is us, we're not paid that much money. He did also reveal, though, which is something I'm glad someone's finally actually said, which is if you train using a student loan in this country to be a medical professional, i.e. a junior doctor, you can then take the taxpayers' money, train in this country, and then go and work abroad, and you don't have to pay your student loan back. So a lot of them are doing that, and I think that's a bit cheeky. But Billy says, yes, the junior doctors start on low pay, but they earn a fair old wedge when they're qualified. Like you say, some of them do the training here, there you go, and go abroad without paying back their student loan. They should be made to pay it back if they emigrate to Australia. I agree with you. We keep hearing that we've got a recruitment and a retention crisis in the NHS, and junior doctors aren't paid enough. But they basically get trained for free at the taxpayer's expense, then they can go and coin it in Australia and never have to pay it back. That's a pretty sweet deal. And if they do stick it out here as well, they do end up on quite a big wedge. And their argument against doing overtime is because it would move them into a higher tax bracket and they wouldn't see much of a return on that money. Now, I do understand that because people have families and they don't want to do it. But I think people here moving into a higher tax bracket and the sympathy evaporates. Like Sarah. Sarah says, higher tax doesn't seem a problem when they do their private work. Interesting stuff, that, Sarah. Yes, a good point. I wish maybe I'd have put that to the chap. Everyone pays more tax the more hours that they work. It's not unique to them. When people say pay is low, but don't qualify what is low, then their argument isn't a strong one. Yes, I did yet again. Asked that doctor, didn't I? What are you paid? He didn't answer me. It's a sliding scale. I said, what are both ends of that scale? He didn't say. I said, what about your pension? He didn't say. and it did emerge that, of course, they can train here for free and then go and work abroad. Roger says doctors and nurses are overworked, underpaid and generally dissatisfied and demoralised because the managers are not doing their job. CEOs may earn 225k per year, but they don't do problem-solving, etc. Yes, hinting, I think, at the management structure. Thank you very much, everybody, for getting in touch. I've got loads more coming in your next hour, of course. Rishi Sunak's first 100 days we pick apart his premiership so far. Should Prince Harry be banned from coming to the coronation as well? Oh, yes, and we've got a little bit of an immigration special for you. I'm Patrick Christys. This is GB News.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. It stays windy, especially windy tonight over Northern Ireland, parts of North Wales and North West England. Further showers to come as well. Turning a little bit drier as the winds slowly ease tomorrow. But low pressure is in control, and as these isobars are pinching together, it is getting very windy now across Northern Ireland. Very blustery this evening here, and those strong winds that move across the Irish Sea to parts of North West England and North Wales through the night. Could cause some structural damage, certainly some disruption to ferry services, and those strong winds will blow in plenty of showers. The rain easing a touch, though, overnight across western parts of Scotland and further south, not too many showers. That strong wind stopping temperatures dropping down to freezing. Most of us start at about 4 or 5, but it will feel cold in the wind on Friday morning. Plenty of showers to come on Friday morning for Northern Ireland, North West England and North Wales, along with northern Scotland, but many eastern and southern areas not seeing too many showers. And the showers tending to ease off in many places come the afternoon, although I think we'll always keep some coming into southwest Scotland. Some sunny spells lifting the temperatures to around about average or a touch above in some spots, but it'll feel colder because of that wind. So a chilly feeling Friday. More rain then comes in during Friday evening, initially into the west, but look at this, another batch of heavy and persistent rain swamps in across the country to start the weekend. So a soggy Saturday morning. There'll be some snow on the hills across parts of Scotland, clearing from Northern Ireland perhaps during the morning, and then the rain should spill away reasonably quickly during the afternoon. So turning a little bit drier, but there'll be more showers following on behind, and it will be windy. Early in the day we could get up to 11 or 12 Celsius, but temperatures probably dropping as that rain clears through the afternoon. And that is a sign of things to come. Mild air for a time on Saturday, but look at this, the map's turning blue. Colder conditions arriving for next week with the return of frost and ice.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
All right, the RMT General Secretary Mick Lynch has met with the rail delivery group over the ongoing job security and pay dispute, and he's actually speaking right outside this studio now. Let's cross live.
We are working jointly towards a revised offer for their section of the dispute, and we've agreed that over the next couple of days we'll continue to work on that through discussions, and we'll see what comes of it. And that's all we can say at this time, I'm afraid. So, no. So we're working on it. So that'll be that. There's not any more to say. Sorry to disappoint you, but that's where we are. Well, that's what you do, isn't it? That's how it works.
OK. So that was, well, a very brief interaction with Mick Lynch there, who is, of course, the General Secretary of the RMT. We'll have more detail on what he's just said there, but he didn't look particularly happy, did he? That's in relation to the latest meetings with overpaying conditions to try to stop more rail strikes. Anyway, I'm going to lob you over now to get your latest headlines, of course, with the wonderful Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you and good afternoon to you. The top story on GB News. The government says a meeting between the Health Secretary and health leaders was good and constructive. It comes as new NHS England data shows ambulances took an hour and a half on average to respond to call-outs in the month of December, the longest response time on record. Details on pay, we believe, weren't discussed at today's meeting, but Steve Barclay has warned we must address the workforce crisis. Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry told GB News talks are the only way forward.
Much better, surely, is to use the system that we already have, which is that people negotiate the basic safety levels, and you can see nurses running off picket lines in order to go and help when there is a particular crisis. Now, that's the reality. That's what's always happened. And we know that even if they do pass this legislation, it's not going to help with the current situation. The current situation can only be helped if the government stops playing games, sits down and talks to the unions and negotiates a deal.
Meanwhile, 100,000 civil servants will strike next month on February the 1st. The decision follows another meeting with the government, one the Public and Commercial Services Union has called a total farce. Union leaders met to discuss the ongoing dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. It follows weeks of walkouts, including the strike by Border Force staff over Christmas. Union leaders have said more money will have to be offered in order to prevent further industrial action. And travel disruption continues for passengers in London today with strikes on the newly opened Elizabeth line. Members from the Transport Salaries Staff Association and Prospect have walked off the job over paying conditions. The two unions rejected a 4.4% increase for this year. Transport for London has warned of a short notice cancellation schedule and many changes. Now, the Northern Ireland Secretary has said there is still a way to go to resolve the row over the Northern Ireland Protocol. And a warning for those watching on television, the following does contain some flashing images. The Irish Premier and Labour leader have met political parties at Stormont today to discuss the post-Brexit trade rules on the Irish land border. The DUP has been blocking the formation of a government until the protocol's dramatically altered or removed. International news now, and Russian mercenaries are claiming they have found a body belonging to one of the two British aid workers missing in Ukraine. The Wagner Group hasn't specified which of the two has reportedly been found, but did say they had documents belonging to both Brits. GB News is unable to verify those claims, and the Foreign Office says it's supporting the families of Andrew Bagshaw and Christopher Parry while they await more information. We'll keep you up to date on that as soon as we have anything new. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian authorities say Russia has attacked a maternity hospital in the port city of Kherson. Video footage shows the aftermath of the strike with heavy damage to windows and offices. There have been no confirmed deaths. That comes after President Zelensky praised the resilience of his forces in the eastern Donbass region. The singer Lee Ryan has been found guilty of racially aggravated assault. The incident happened on a British Airways flight last July. Ealing Magistrates Court heard the former member of Blue also asked a flight attendant to kiss him. The former pop star has apologised for his behaviour. An energy watchdog says more than 3 million people in the UK ran out of credit on their prepayment meters last year. Citizens Advice says more than 2 million people were being disconnected at least once a month, leaving them unable to turn their heating on or cook a meal. The charity is calling for a total ban on the forced installation of prepayment meters until new protections are introduced. More women will be able to get checked for breast cancer after the government announced £10 million in funding towards 8 NHS screening units. The initiative will make screening more accessible for thousands of women, with 29 new units being set up. The investment will also see upgrades to ultrasound and X-rays to better detect cancer using new and improved software. King Charles and the Prince and Princess of Wales have appeared in public for the first time since the release of the Duke of Sussex's memoir, Spare. William and Kate made a visit to Merseyside, where they opened the Royal Liverpool University Hospital. They're also meeting with health workers and mental health staff to thank them for their efforts during the winter months. Meanwhile, King Charles has been in Aberdeenshire, visiting the Aboyne and Mid Deeside Community Shed, as it's called. And lastly, Chester Zoo has boosted its conservation efforts with a new arrival, a critically endangered chimpanzee baby. The baby boy is said to be in good health and has bonded well with Mummy, as you can see clinging on to her tummy there if you're watching on television, as well as the rest of the troop. He's only the fourth chimp to have been born at the zoo in 5 years, but the first male in more than a decade. Hold tight. That's it. You're up to date on GB News. More news as we have it. Now back to Patrick.
Well, Rishi Sunak outlined his priorities for government last night in his first party political broadcast as Prime Minister. On the agenda, blaming the pandemic for NHS backlogs, pledges to tackle illegal migration and measures to repair the economy. Here's just a little flavour of what he had to say.
Under my leadership, the government's priorities are your priorities, the people's priorities. Together, we're putting your needs above politics to repair the economy, strengthen our NHS, tackle illegal migration, and restore pride in the United Kingdom, our great country.
Doesn't it look like someone's lit his ears up there? Anyway, Rishi Sunak has been in number 10 for 100 days today. Has he impressed you? And most importantly, would you vote for him? So 100 days in, has Rishi... Give me your verdict on Rishi Sunak 100 days in. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Let's speak now to GB News' political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who's in Westminster. Rishi outlining his priorities, isn't he?
Yeah, he is indeed, Patrick. At least he's lasted longer than Liz Truss.
And a lettuce.
Yeah, that's something he can hold on to, isn't it? Yeah. So trying to set out these priorities. We heard this at the start of the year, didn't we? These kind of 5 targets he set his government. Now, you know what? They're kind of quite lofty ambitions, something, frankly, that many out there would like to see happen sooner rather than later, whether it's the small bugs crisis in the English Channel, whether it's tackling inflation, whether it is trying to tackle that backlog with the National Health Service. Labour, though, and others, critics would point out, well, you know, they are a bit too lofty in the sense that actually they're not very detailed. You know, precisely how quickly do you want to get that backlog on the NHS down? Is it down to 2019 levels or 2010 levels? Is it stopping all the migration across the English Channel, or is it trying just to get those numbers down? And inflation's going to fall anyway, almost irrespective of what this government does. But there is some good hope, or some optimism, I should say, at least for the government today. And there's not been much of that around, has there, recently, Patrick, with suggestions that things are starting to turn a corner when it comes to the National Health Service with the backlog, for example, that there were 70,000 more elective treatment in December than there was at the same month in 2019, so pre the pandemic, and also that the number of people on year-long waits has fallen. Now, it's only down 4,000 on the month before, but still it's heading in the right direction. I think irrespective of all of that and that party election broadcast or party political broadcast last night, many people want the Prime Minister to focus on the more immediate term issues, not least of all what's happening with the National Health Service, particularly in England, given the figures that have just been released today, suggesting that if you have a stroke or a heart attack and you call 999, it may well take an hour and a half on average for that ambulance to turn up. Quite extraordinary, given the fact the target is 18 minutes. Or that if you turn up to accident and emergency, again, emergency, that you might have to wait more than 4 hours. More than half of the number of people are having to do so now. The worst records, or the worst essentially that we've ever seen on records. And we've got potentially more strikes coming up. Well, we know we've got nurses going out on strike next week. We know paramedics are going to do the same the week after. It is possible we may well see that carry on for months and months to come. Junior doctors balloting as well about potential strike action. So, yes, the Prime Minister trying to set out his ambitions for the rest of this Parliament, trying to convince people that if he gets these things achieved in the next year and a half, 2 years, that he'll get re-elected. But in the end, Patrick, on January 12th, 2023, lots of people say, sort out these problems in the weeks and months to come, please.
OK, good stuff, Darren. Thank you very much. Darren McCaffrey there, our political editor. Let's focus in now. I was going to be doing, throughout the course of this show, on a variety of different elements what Rishi Sunak had to say. And one of the big ones we're focusing on now, of course, is tackling illegal migration. Fascinating. I had a former Labour special advisor who said that he didn't think that illegal migration was anywhere near the country's top priorities. He thought things like food prices, etc. I can understand the point of what he's saying, but isn't this part of the problem when it comes to people really trusting what Keir Starmer's saying when he says that he was bothered about solving the small boats crisis in the Channel? Because I'm not sure that Labour are being that genuine about the fact that it's one of their priorities. Anyway, he says that the government's deploying hundreds, this is Rishi Sunak, deploying hundreds of new agents to stop illegal crossings of the Channel. Rishi Sunak also said that people who arrive in the UK illegally will not have the right to stay and will be removed.
It's simply not right that people come here illegally. It's unfair on those who follow the rules, on those who really deserve our help. And above all, it's unfair on British taxpayers. It must stop. Under my government, it will stop. We're taking decisive action already, deploying hundreds of new agents to tackle immigration criminals, putting an end to the appalling situation where taxpayers are paying to keep illegal migrants in hotels. And we're introducing new laws that make it unambiguously clear that if you come to our country illegally, you will not have the right to stay and will be removed.
OK, look, the words there are good. Whether or not you believe him is a different question, or undeniably something needs to be done about it. Can I just say, can you imagine if I earn a living reading the autocue like he reads an autocue? Let's speak to former Chief Immigration Officer at UK Border Force, Kevin Saunders. Kevin, gosh, sorry, I was just doing my Rishi Sunak impression there. Right, OK, so he says that it's unfair on the British taxpayer and that he's going to actually stop the small boats crisis and that illegal immigrants will be removed. Let's start with the latter there. How is he going to remove all of these people?
I have absolutely no idea at all, because they're undocumented. And you can't remove people if they haven't got a document for the country that you want to remove them to. So, I know something that I don't know. I don't know how he's going to do it.
OK, and he's not made any reference to you or people, as far as you're aware, in the Border Force as to exactly how you are going to be expected to collect all of these people coming off the Channel and then help remove them.
No, you can't do it because they're undocumented. So they're not telling you their real names. OK, they're not telling you their real names, dates of birth, nationality. We eventually get the nationality out of them, but you can't remove them unless you've got a document for that country. And if you go to the country and say, can we have a document, they want the name and the date of birth of the person that you want the document for. And they're not giving us that. So You can't remove them unless you have a deal like we've got with Albania, where the Albanians will take them anyway.
OK, all right, so Rishi Sunak's big thing is that he's 100 days in now and that they are taking decisive action on illegal immigration. What decisive action have you seen so far?
Well, he's increased the National Crime Agency. He's put more money and more people into the NCA so they can chase the people smugglers. And he's got people over in France in a role where they're observing what the French are doing. They can't actually do anything, but they can look and see what the French are doing about the people on the beaches and in the control centres. But Patrick, I've been saying for God knows how long, if you want to solve this problem, you've got to convince the French to get the French naval forces out into the channel to stop the boats. Right. They could do it tomorrow if they wanted to, but they don't. So realistically, until they do that, we've had it.
So potentially, giving him the benefit of the doubt here, Rishi Sunak, he doesn't want to reveal the exact negotiations he's having with the French. He doesn't want to reveal his hand. He doesn't want to give us false hope. But what would convince the French to actually patrol that bit of the channel and stop the boats coming? Because that is the claim from Rishi Sunak, by the way, that he will stop the small boats. You're saying the only way you can do that is by getting the French to stop them. How does he get the French to stop them?
He's got to do some sort of deal with France to stop it. Now, if you look at what's going on at the moment, relations with France have been awful. They're much better now, but they've been much better now because we're doing commercial business with France. We've done the nuclear reactor bit with them, where they're going to build nuclear reactors for us. And you will have noticed that once that was announced, the French were more helpful about the channel. Now, what Sunak has got to do is to say to Macron, look, what is it that you want from us? And let's see if we can do it. My feeling is it'll probably be something on Northern Ireland, perhaps fishing, something like that. And if you can get an agreement with that, then you might see the French being more understanding about the migrants.
OK, all right, that's one way of doing it, I suppose. Another way of doing it potentially would be to get other deals with other countries other than Rwanda and actually get some flights to take off. But just one thing that he is saying is that he's going to increase the amount of border force patrols. That, I think a lot of people would argue, is just a sticking plaster, because does that just make it easier and quicker for people who are in the Channel to get to Britain?
Yes, it does. We need more staff. There's absolutely no doubt that we need more staff. I mean, I believe they've offered 1,000, but if they had offered 5,000, that would have been better. But it takes time to train these guys. You need to train somebody to go on the controls and operate properly. Is a good 6 months to a year before they're doing it properly.
Right. OK, lovely stuff. Well, look, thank you very much for giving your take. Kevin Saunders there, former Chief Immigration Officer at UK Border Force. On what Rishi Sunak has said, one of his top priorities, of course, is stopping illegal immigration. He has said some rather strong words there. Stop the small boats. He's also spoken about anyone coming here illegally will be removed. Unfortunately, as it currently stands, unless something new emerges, it doesn't seem immediately obvious as to how we're going to be able to remove all of these people. We've just heard there, former Chief Immigration Officer at UK Border Force saying a lot of these people, well, they won't tell you where they're from, and they will be undocumented, which means it's hard to remove them. Rishi Sunak, of course, has also said he wants to slash the asylum seeker backlog, in fact, remove it entirely. Well, the two there go hand in hand, don't they? Because if he doesn't know where they're from or where to send them back to, then that backlog increases. So maybe not off to a winner there, although, of course, very well-meaning. The other thing there is saying that he's going to put more patrols in the Channel. What we have heard there is that is, yet again, just a sticking plaster. So when it comes to this, so far, what you've heard, Rishi Sunak and his top promises, a lot of them are going to happen anyway. The only one where there's any jeopardy, I would argue, is what's going on in the Channel. And from what we know so far, nothing that he said is going to sort it. So what does that mean for you as a voter? And I was asking a lot of you to get in touch, and thank you very much for those of you who have, people like Neil. He says that the party political broadcast is one of the worst he's seen. He says it's so fake, like a robot repeating things he doesn't believe. So there you go. There's a lot of this coming in, by the way. I'm trying to find some positive ones, but there aren't a huge amount of positive ones. But yeah, keep your views coming in. It does appear to me as though, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Neil, about a chap who maybe doesn't quite believe that he actually has the power to fix things, blaming things on other issues, so the NHS on coronavirus, the economy on Ukraine, and then trying to stick a sticking plaster over what is going on in the Channel. Anyway, moving on. The Department of Health and Social Care says Steve Barclay recognised the significant pressures that staff are working under in the NHS during talks with employers and union leaders earlier today. Junior doctors are currently being balloted on possible strike action in March based on pay and conditions. And whilst neither side said an agreement was reached, the government described it as constructive. Figures out today, though, show that A&E waiting times have hit a new high, with more than half of the people in A&E waiting more than 4 hours to be seen. With me now is Councillor Stuart Carroll, a Conservative representing the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead, and health comes under your brief, Stuart, as well, doesn't it? What do you make of these latest figures then? Massive waiting times in A&E.
Good afternoon, Patrick. Good afternoon to your viewers. It's very concerning, and I think one of the things we really do need to do with the NHS, above and beyond what the Health Secretary is rightly trying to do, which is get a resolution to the strike situation, we have to have, I think, an honest discussion about where we are with the NHS and what the NHS should be for looking ahead to the future. Ever since 1948, the NHS has been operating on its principles of universal, comprehensive, free at the point of need. But that was at a time when we had different life expectancy, a different size of population, and now we're dealing with a number of challenges on multiple fronts, which have been exacerbated by the pandemic and the cost of living crisis. Of that, there's no doubt. But I do think there's got to be an honest national conversation led by government, led by politicians, about what the NHS should be doing and what it shouldn't be doing, because these figures are showing, to borrow a footballing analogy, the NHS is in the relegation zone. And if we don't do something drastic soon, it's going to go down. And the consequences of that are enormous because so many of us rely and depend on the NHS.
Yeah, indeed. Well, what should be done to fix it then? Have you got some solutions to this problem?
Yeah, so I've written an article recently on this, and I think what we have to do is take an emergency approach, and that's focusing on 5 critical things. That's got to, of course, be primary care and GP consultations, and we need to start strategically using other healthcare professionals, particularly pharmacists, to enable quick, effective, safe appointments. A&E ambulance is vital. We've got to place an emphasis on getting speed and safety. Elective operations, particularly on the 12-month backlog, and an emphasis particularly on paediatrics and early years. Vaccination, screening, diagnostics, that has to be a continued emphasis to try and stop demand hitting the NHS. And mental health services, which we know has had an enormous amount of pressure placed on it, not least because of the pandemic. And also, we've got to get real about the fact that suicide remains one of the biggest killers in this country, particularly of men under the age of 50. We need to have a priority emergency action plan there. And however hard and tempting it may be, anything else needs to be deferred as nice to do until we, to follow my analogy through, get out of relegation and move up to a more secure mid-table position with the NHS.
Would an option be, if I keep hearing about, which I do, junior doctors training here in this country, doing their degrees here in this country, taking out student loans at presumably the taxpayers' expense in this country, and then going to Australia because they say it's better, why don't we just copy the Australian system?
I think we have to look at these options in terms of particularly the staffing side and the staff shortages and the skill shortages that you're making reference to. We have to face up to the fact that we have a problem there, we have a gap there, and we can't just keep doing, as Einstein would say, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. The 2 other things I would point out, Patrick, here as well, which are also elephants in the room, and that is we have to fix adult social care. For nearly 6 years, I was responsible for that at a local level, and it remains a massive problem because of the issues to do with discharge, and we have to start looking at a more radical approach to community care. And government after government has failed on that, frankly, and we do need to have a serious reform package. And the other thing is, the National health service, it's a bit of a misnomer. It's really a national illness service or a national hospital service. We need to really have a proper definition of health and what do we mean by it? What are we asking of the health service again? And how are we ensuring that across society we are placing the right emphasis on health inequalities, which again we know have magnified.
Good stuff. Well, look, thank you very, very much, Stuart. Great to have you back on the show. Councillor Stuart Carroll there, Conservative, representing the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead, and health falls under his brief. You're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. The Prince and Princess of Wales opened a new hospital in the Liverpool area today. The King, he's been up in Aberdeenshire. Life is carrying on for the working royals, despite, of course, Harry's bombshell claims. And the latest revelations being reported today is that Harry will not be welcome at the coronation. Get your views coming in. GB Views at gbnews.uk. I'll be back in a tick.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Prince William and Catherine have officially opened the new Royal Liverpool University Hospital during their first official visit following the release of Prince Harry's bombshell book, and the explosive personal anecdotes in the Duke of Sussex's memoir have cast doubt over his attendance at the King's coronation. Sources have revealed senior royals are hesitant about inviting Harry to the coronation due to worries that their conversations will end up in a future bestseller. Yeah, exactly. Let's cross live now to GB News' royal reporter Cameron Walker in Liverpool. Cameron, there you go. Harry, it would appear, has well and truly burnt his bridges.
It would appear so at the moment, Patrick, yes, but despite the Sussex storm brewing across the other side of the Atlantic because of that memoir and the literal storm blowing through Liverpool and the west of the United Kingdom today, the Prince and Princess of Wales were very much focused on their public duties as working members of the royal family. They started their day here in Liverpool at the Royal Liverpool University Hospital. They were meeting staff and thanking staff for the work they've been doing over the winter months. They were also officially opening the new buildings here. It's the biggest in the country, this hospital, where 100% of the patient rooms are ensuite and private. It's expected to improve the patient's experience quite a bit. They also unveiled a plaque and visited a charity which supports mental health in young people. But of course, the big elephant in the room was the Prince and Princess of Wales. Was Harry's memoir being released. They were actually heckled by one journalist as they entered the hospital behind me here, but they definitely did not respond to any of the allegations which were thrown at them. Of course, in Prince Harry's memoir, he talks about a text exchange between Meghan and Kate, where Kate allegedly made Meghan cry. He also talked about a heated confrontation between him and his brother, William, where he alleges that William physically attacked him. Kensington Palace have not responded to any of the allegations in the memoir. They were very much focused today on the engagements here, the show of public duties for the Prince and Princess of Wales. Elsewhere, the King, he has been in Aberdeen. He's been visiting an organisation which supports men who are affected by rural loneliness. And also Princess Anne, she has been in Cyprus visiting military families. So as for the working members of the royal family, it's very much a united front here, and putting on business as usual, fulfilling their duties as working members of the royal family. And of course, it's only a few months, Patrick, until the King's coronation, and there is a big question mark over whether Harry and Meghan are going to be attending that.
Yes, indeed. Well, I think they should probably do the world a favour and steer clear of it, Cameron. Cameron Walker there, our royal reporter, who is in Liverpool. Work goes on, normal day-to-day service well and truly resumed for the other working members of the royal family. I've got a few emails for you just quickly. gbviews at gbnews.uk. Invite Harry to the coronation and he'll whinge about security, having to leave his wife and children behind, or his wife being blanked. No one talking to him, being sat at the back, blah, blah, blah. Don't invite him, but he'll only whinge about not being invited, so don't invite him. That's John's comments. Yes, OK, so limiting the amount of whinging that Whinge and Ginge can actually do, I think, John's approach there. Not a bad option. I suppose they've got to give him maybe the option to go, and one would hope that Harry would do the right thing and not turn it into a soap opera. But, yeah, how on earth can anyone trust a word that Harry's saying? By the way, there is a clip from his audio book, which appears to be, I would argue, some kind of, like, Freudian saga, which involves the frostbite that he had in a private part of his body and a rather bizarre memory of his mother. But we'll talk about that a bit later. People over 50 could be exempt from paying income tax. Different story. That's under plans being considered by the government to get older people back into work to fill job shortages. We will hear from our economics and business editor Liam Halligan next. Also, rather interesting stuff. If you're on disability benefits, you might get disability benefits whilst also being in work. How do you feel about that? Now, though, it's your headlines.
Patrick, thank you. The latest headlines this hour. The government says a meeting between the Health Secretary and health leaders was good and constructive. It comes as new NHS England data shows ambulances took an hour and a half on average to respond to call-outs in the month of December. That's the longest response time on record. Details on pay weren't discussed at today's meetings, but Steve Barclay has warned he must address a workforce crisis. The Shadow Attorney General, Emily Thornberry, told GB News talks are the only way forward.
Much better, surely, is to use the system that we already have, which is that people negotiate the basic safety levels, and you can see nurses running off picket lines in order to go and help when there is a particular crisis. That's the reality. That's what's always happened. And we know that even if they do pass this legislation, it's not going to help with the current situation. The current situation can only be helped if the government stops playing games, sits down and talks to the unions and negotiates a deal.
The Northern Ireland Secretary says there's still a way to go to resolve the row over the Northern Ireland Protocol, and a warning the following pictures do contain some flashing images. The Irish Premier and the Labour leader met this morning with other political parties at Stormont today to discuss the post-Brexit trade rules on the Irish land border. The DUP has been blocking the formation of a government until the protocol is altered or removed. Russian mercenaries are claiming they have found a body belonging to one of the two British aid workers missing in Ukraine. The Wagner Group hasn't specified which of the two has reportedly been found, but did say they had documents belonging to both. GB News has been unable to verify those claims, and the Foreign Office says it is supporting the families of Andrew Bagshaw and Christopher Parry while they await more information. The singer, Lee Ryan, has been found guilty of racially aggravated assault. The incident happened on a British Airways flight last July. Ealing Magistrates Court in West London heard the former member of Blue also asked a female flight attendant to kiss him. The former pop star has apologised for his behaviour. And as you've been hearing, the Prince and Princess of Wales have appeared in public for the first time since the publication of Prince Harry's memoir, Spare. Prince William and Kate are in Merseyside to officially open the Royal Liverpool University Hospital. The two are meeting healthcare and mental health staff to thank them for their ongoing work throughout the winter months. Those are your latest news headlines. You are up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. We're back in a bit.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
OK, welcome back. Now, ministers are looking into new ways to fill Britain's growing inactivity problem. With vast gaps in the labour market across industries, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says we need to see where we can incentivise people who can be in work. Now, this could include people over 50 being exempt from income tax and disabled workers still having the option to claim benefits should they return to work. Two quite big headlines there, really. So people over 50... being enticed back into work so that they don't pay income tax, which is massive, really, and also people on disabled benefits still getting those benefits whilst working. Bit odd, if you ask me. But anyway, here to pick the bones out of this is our economics and business editor, is Liam Halligan with On the Money. OK, so... I'm going to start with the disabled stuff, if that's all right. If I'm on disability benefits, presumably that's because I can't work. But then if I do work, I still get my disability benefits. Isn't that a bit odd?
What this story is, Patrick, it's known in the journalistic trade as a flyer. Okay. So some special advisor, somebody voice in the dark will have talked to a newspaper journalist and said, oh, we're thinking about this. So they're flying a kite, seeing what the public thinks. There are no on-the-record quotes from ministers about this subject. But what is true is that disability claims, the cost of disability benefit claims are up 70% since before the pandemic. And at the same time, there are almost 250,000 more over 50s who have quit the workforce before regular retirement age, again, since the pandemic, because a lot of people got used to staying at home during lockdown. And this is now starting to seriously impact the economy and the national accounts. We talk a lot about the number of vacancies that there are. you know, it might partly be because over 50s, they don't like going to workplaces because they've got to be told to watch their pronouns and they don't really understand the culture wars.
Yeah.
I think it's partly that. I don't think that's a flippant point. I think that's true.
I agree with you.
But I also think that a lot of people are staying at home, and the Treasury in particular is getting worried about this because it's starting to impact economic growth and tax revenues. So the idea is, and it is just an idea, that maybe some over 50s will pay less income tax. The idea that all over 50s aren't going to pay income tax is nuts, because over 50s disproportionately earn more money, and the idea you're going to cut income tax for all people, many of whom own more money, is for the birds. And but what I do think is a very important point is that you do need to incentivise some over 50s to come back to work, maybe by raising the value of their pension cap so they can pay more into their pension without being penalised by tax. Particularly doctors, for instance. That is an active idea going around in the Treasury. And on the disability side, there certainly is what we call a benefits trap. You can sometimes get to the situation where if you work a little bit, then you can lose so much of your benefits that it doesn't pay you to work, so you'll kind of be irrational if you actually get up and go to work.
Yeah, I think because a lot of people would look at this and go, well, hang on a minute, are people just going to get double bubble? They're going to claim their benefits for disability whilst working, and they can coin it in, and that, in a sense, is a waste of money for the British taxpayer.
There are some disability benefits which are kind of living with it, you know, mobility allowances and so on. People who are, you know, capable of working, able-bodied or partially able-bodied in some sense, but they do need additional help, and the state, rightly in my view, does help them with that additional help, maybe for equipment or other assistance, and so on, maybe extra help with their electricity bills, because some disabled people, you know, you have equipment which they need to help them. So I don't think this is a completely flip idea. Certainly the tapering of disability benefit as people work, some forms of disability benefit and mobility allowance, but the idea that, you know, the headline is over 50s might not pay income tax, nuts.
But how are they going to entice someone who's over 50, let's say late 50s, who's had a lifetime of working in office environment, trudging into the city every single day, trudging out of it. Now they're seeing all they can see any time they come into the office is rainbow flags and social minefields absolutely everywhere. You know, HR departments running rings around people for just daring to shake someone's hand inappropriately, supposedly. What incentive is there for them to get off their couch in their own house with the telly on in the background and working from their laptop?
Well, it might be that they are, you know, if employers need these kind of experienced people, you know, we are foregoing a lot of experience and expertise in our economy, men and women of 50 plus, who aren't going to work regularly the way that they used to go to work. And it may be that employers, if they want that expertise, they say, well, you can work from home a number of days per week to make it easier for you. It may be, as I said, that the Exchequer says you can add a bit more to your pension pot without being penalised for tax. You have a kind of lifetime allowance, as you know.
Do you think people are getting lazier?
I think a lot of people have yet to recover from lockdown. There is a much higher rate of economic inactivity. I think that's completely true. The UK is almost unique among European nations. A lot more of our people haven't gone back to work after lockdown than almost all other major European economies. I think it's partly to do with the inadequacies of our transport system, to be honest. And, you know, since the pandemic, we've had train strikes and all kinds of other issues. So I do think the UK's got some way to go. I do think the government's right to be looking at ways to incentivise people to get back to work. It could be that they tweak disability benefits, but the idea that people above 50 won't have to pay income tax is a complete non-starter, in my view.
Liam, thank you very much, as ever. Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor. Now, on my show, I always want to hear your thoughts on the topics that we're discussing. So joining me is someone who could go back to work income tax-free, apparently, if the plans are enacted. Sue Cox, who's in Felixstowe, and you're an avid viewer of this show. Oh, good stuff. Well, lovely to meet you anyway. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for tuning into the show and being a part of it now. You've got yourself on the telly, which is great. So, what could... So, would you mind explaining your personal circumstances to me at the moment? So, do you work from home?
Yeah, my personal circumstances, I retired early at 51. I lived abroad for a while, come back pre-COVID, and I've been here ever since. I've got a small company pension, but apart from that, I'm living off savings.
OK,
and
so...
I'm 64.
I was never going to ask that, and of course, I'm very shocked to hear it as well, I must say. But what could incentivise you to go back to work? Have you got any desire whatsoever to really go back to work?
I have contemplated it, but I have got a very full life. I've got a lot of hobbies, and I would actually like to maybe do some voluntary work, you know, helping the elderly and that sort of things. But in terms of me going back and being exempt from tax, I would need to earn £30,000 a year, and bearing in mind, hypothetically, they're saying for 1 year, I would need to earn £30,000 a year. And I would save just under £4,000 tax. Highly unlikely I'd get a job earning £30,000 a year. I'd probably get minimum wage working in a supermarket, in which case a year's worth of tax saving would be less than £1,000. Bearing in mind the rate of inflation, my savings, what I'm living on, has, you know, the inflation's 20%, my savings have gone down by 20%. So... you know, I don't think that to save that amount of tax would be an incentive.
And the transport as well, Sue, presumably transport costs getting in and out, and often when you're at work, you nip to the shop across the road from work and buy your lunch or your dinner there, and then, you know, it's probably more expensive than what you could make at home and things. And I suppose there's that personal enjoyment as well for it. What do you make of Rishi Sunak in general so far? He's 100 days in. He's outlined his big 5-point plan, which you can definitely easily condense into 3 points. What do you think about him?
I think at the moment he just appears a lot of hot air. I don't believe that I want to see him doing what he says he's going to do.
Are you willing to give him the time to do that, though? Do you trust that he actually will do it? Because he does seem a little bit rigid at the minute.
No, I don't think he will. I don't think he will do it. I do think it's all talk at the moment.
And what are the issues, just finally, if that's all right, Sue, when it comes to sorting out the economy, sorting out the NHS or dealing with illegal immigration, which one is the big issue for you?
The biggest issue for me is illegal immigration, because I think that impacts on all of our infrastructure. Not only does it cost thousands and thousands keeping people in hotels, it puts so much pressure on every other aspect of our lives, the NHS in particular. And I think the reason the NHS is struggling now is because the population of this country has gone up near on 10 million in the last 30 years.
Exactly.
But there certainly hasn't been hospitals to accommodate that.
And they don't like talking about that, do they, Sue? They go, oh, the schools are struggling, the overcrowding in schools. Oh, gosh, you can't move on the roads these days. There's cars everywhere, loads of pollution, loads of traffic. Oh, hospitals, you can't get an appointment. They don't like to mention the fact that rapid population growth has got a huge amount to do with this, and we can't mention it, possibly, can we, Sue? Well, you certainly can on the show. So I've got to cut you loose, I'm afraid, but good luck, whatever you decide to do, whether or not Rishi Sunak can entice you back into work or not. I'd love to have you back on this show at the earliest possible opportunity, Sue. Look after yourself.
I'd love to come back.
Good stuff. Take it easy, Sue. Sue Cox there, who's in Felixstowe.
Thank you.
There you go. All right, take care. OK, so, moving on to matters, well, a bit more serious, really, I suppose, in a way, of course, because a Russian mercenary group has claimed that its fighters have sadly found the body of one of 2 British aid workers reported missing in eastern Ukraine in recent days. The Foreign Office has told GB News that it is aware of the claim by the Wagner Group and is supporting the families of Andrew Bagshaw and Christopher Parry while they await more information. The 2 men were believed to be heading for the embattled town of Soledar in eastern Ukraine to help evacuate civilians when they disappeared over the weekend. Our security editor, Mark White, has more.
The battle around the eastern town of Soledar is intense, with claims and counterclaims over exactly who is now in control here. In truth, we still don't really know. What is horribly clear, though, is that there is very little of this town left. Ukrainian drone footage showing most of the neighbourhoods here have been obliterated. It's against this backdrop that British aid workers Andrew Bagshaw and Christopher Parry disappeared in recent days. And now Russian mercenaries, the Wagner Group, claim to have recovered the body of one of the men in the area. There's no independent verification of this, or indeed whether it is one of the missing volunteers.
So, Merry Christmas.
Over recent months, Christopher Parry has documented his work in helping evacuate and provide aid for the area's elderly and infirm. The Foreign Office said it was aware of the reports and is supporting the families of both men while they await more information. The Wagner Group is spearheading the operation to try to take control of Soledar. Other Ukrainian drone footage shows what are believed to be Wagner fighters attempting to advance while clearly coming under fire. Russia is desperate to prevail here after many weeks in which Ukrainian counter-offensives seem to have made all the key gains. With Moscow determined to regain momentum, Russia's top general in Ukraine has been replaced. Just 3 months after Sergei Zurovkin on the left here took charge, he's now been replaced by the man on the right, Chief of the General Staff, Valery Gerasimov. Many analysts believe the move isn't just indicative of the need for a change of military strategy on the ground, but points to a degree of political infighting in Moscow. Throughout Ukraine, many communities are continuing to come under heavy Russian bombardment. Here in the southern city of Kherson, images show a maternity hospital which was struck, causing a number of injuries, according to Ukrainian officials. And in the months ahead, the fighting across this battered nation will only intensify as both Ukraine and Russia prepare for spring offensives. Mark White, GB News.
Mark White joins me now. Mark, look, desperately sad news for this individual's family and concerns for the other chap's family as well. But what does all of this really mean for people back here in Britain?
Well, it really highlights just how dangerous Ukraine is, if ever they needed to be told that, and how really people from this country should not be going out there. The British government says that, you know, aid workers, and certainly not as fighters, should anybody from this country be heading out to help in the war effort in Ukraine. They've made that quite clear over recent months. But these two men, they were determined, according to the families, to do what they could to help the elderly and the infirm in many of these embattled towns across Ukraine. And there's no doubt they did good work and they rescued people, but they were posting videos on their own blog sites showing just how dangerous it was, dodging bullets and shells. It clearly was. They were in the middle of a war zone. But it's deeply, deeply tragic. And now, of course, the families await word of whether that is their loved one that this mercenary group claims to have found.
Yeah, and this Wagner group is a group of mercenaries who are spearheading the Russian assault, I suppose you could say. I can remember here reporting a lot about, the idea now the Ukrainians are pushing the Russians back. Is this a bit of a change now?
Yeah, we've had a counter-offensive by the Ukrainian forces in recent months, which has really been quite successful and has made some key gains, particularly the city of Kherson in the south, strategically important city that was in Russian control for many, many months, now back in Ukrainian control. That was a big blow for the Russians. There have been other gains, but now this city, Soledar, in eastern Ukraine, I say city, it's a small town really, of 10,000 people, and considerably smaller than that because the vast majority of people, quite rightly, have fled that particular town, which is in ruins. But if they were to take that town, it would be psychologically important for the Russians, but also it would have some strategic advantage because it's not far from the city of Bakhmut, which is the scene again of intense fighting and an effort by the Russians to try to take that city.
Yeah, and Vladimir Putin appears to change management more than Chelsea Football Club at the moment, doesn't he? General Armageddon, I believe, has been sacked. Hopefully they're not putting Captain Hindsight in there, because that would mean Keir Starmer would, of course, be spearheading the new Russian assault. But what's happened?
Yeah, General Gerasimov, who is now in charge, he's the chief of the general staff. So, in other words, the head of the army has taken over all control of the operations on the ground after the previous general was in there just 3 months because the general before him and generals before him were seen as clearly...
You're getting life insurance as a general in the... Carry on, yeah.
Well, quite a few generals, actually, you say that, have been killed out in Ukraine as well, along with many, many other subordinate ranks out in Ukraine. So it's a dangerous old place to be, and these generals are out there often on the front line with their troops. As I say, so Gerasimov is in charge now of the efforts, and what we will get in the months ahead is a spring offensive from both the Russians and the Ukrainians. Who will prevail? Well, probably no one anytime soon. This is going to be a long and dirty campaign.
Mark, thank you very much. Mark White there, our Home and Security Editor, bringing you the latest from the Ukraine-Russia conflict and, of course, sadly, a bit of British involvement there. You're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Lots more to come in the next hour. Yes, we're going to be returning to Harry. We're going to have a big head-to-head debate on whether or not Harry should come to the coronation. I want your views. I want to hear from you. GBViews and gbnews.uk. But right now, here's your weather.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. It stays windy, especially windy tonight over Northern Ireland, parts of North Wales and northwest England. Further showers to come as well. Turning a little bit drier as the winds slowly ease tomorrow. But low pressure is in control, and as these isobars are pinching together, it is getting very windy now across Northern Ireland. Very blustery this evening here, and there's strong winds that move across the Irish Sea to parts of northwest England and North Wales through the night. Could cause some structural damage, certainly some disruption to ferry services, and those strong winds will blow in plenty of showers. The rain easing a touch, though, overnight across western parts of Scotland and further south, not too many showers. That strong wind stopping, temperatures dropping down to freezing. Most of us start at about 4 or 5, but it will feel cold in the wind on Friday morning. Plenty of showers to come on Friday morning for Northern Ireland, northwest England and North Wales, along with northern Scotland, but many eastern and southern areas not seeing too many showers. And the showers tending to ease off in many places come the afternoon, although I think we'll always keep some coming into southwest Scotland. Some sunny spells lifting the temperatures to around about average or a touch above in some spots, but it'll feel colder because of that wind. So a chilly feeling Friday. More rain then comes in during Friday evening, initially into the west, but look at this, another batch of heavy and persistent rain swamps in across the country to start the weekend. So a soggy Saturday morning. There'll be some snow on the hills across parts of Scotland, clearing from Northern Ireland perhaps during the morning, and then the rain should spill away reasonably quickly during the afternoon, so turning a little bit drier, but there'll be more showers following on behind, and it will be windy. Early in the day we could get up to 11 or 12 Celsius, but temperatures probably dropping as that rain clears through the afternoon. And that is a sign of things to come. Mild air for a time on Saturday, but look at this, the map's turning blue. Colder conditions arriving for next week with the return of frost and ice.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hey, welcome along. It's just about to go 5 p.m. You're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News, with you for the next hour. Now, Rishi Sunak has been in number 10 for 100 days today, and we've now got a better understanding of what he's like as a man and what he wants to achieve. He's outlined his vision for the country in his first party political broadcast of the year, ending illegal immigration, repairing the economy and fixing the NHS. They're all on the agenda. We will speak to Conservative MP Craig McKinley to get his hot take on his party leader's plans, and it's been reported some of Boris Johnson's aides completely ignored lockdown rules during a number 10 party. Hear me out on this, people. I want to know, really, whether or not you care anymore. Frankly, whether or not you'd stick to any lockdown rules if they happened again. Maybe you do care, I don't know. There are also some rather fruity reports about, well, individuals at this party being rather intimate with each other as well. Hey, come on, it's a works do. Do you really care about people breaking lockdown restrictions anymore? That's coming up later this hour and throughout the day. I want to get your views on all of the topics we're discussing, including whether or not Prince Harry should come to the coronation. The royal rumblings at the moment are that he might not be invited. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Tweet me at GB News. But before that, it's the headlines.
Patrick, thank you, and good evening to you. The latest headlines this hour on GB News. The government says a meeting between the Health Secretary and health leaders today was good and constructive. That comes as new NHS England data shows ambulances took an hour and a half on average to respond to call-outs in the month of December. That's the longest response time on record. Details on pay weren't discussed at today's meeting, but Steve Barclay warned he must address the workforce crisis. Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry told GB News talks are the only way forward.
Much better, surely, is to use the system that we already have, which is that people negotiate the basic safety levels, and you can see nurses running off picket lines in order to go and help when there is a particular crisis. Now, that's the reality. That's what's always happened. And we know that even if they do pass this legislation, it's not going to help with the current situation. The current situation can only be helped if the government stops playing games, sits down and talks to the unions and negotiates a deal.
Meanwhile, 100,000 civil servants will strike next month on February the 1st. The decision follows another meeting with the government, which the Public and Commercial Services Union has called a total farce. Union leaders met to discuss the ongoing dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. It follows weeks of walkouts, including the strike by Border Force staff over Christmas, and union leaders have said more money will have to be offered in order to prevent further industrial action. And travel disruption continues for passengers in and around London today, with strikes on the newly opened Elizabeth line. Members from the Transport Salaried Staffs Association and their sister union Prospect have walked off the job over pay and conditions. The two unions rejected a 4.4% increase for this year. Transport for London has warned of short notice cancellations and changes to schedules. Well, away from strikes, the Northern Ireland Secretary has said there's still a way to go to resolve the row over the Northern Ireland Protocol. And a warning for those watching on TV, the following does contain flashing images. The Irish Premier and the Labour leader have met political parties at Stormont this morning to discuss the post-Brexit trade rules on the Irish land border. The DUP has been blocking the formation of a proper government there until the protocol is dramatically altered or even removed. In the United States, President Joe Biden is facing new questions about his handling of classified documents. All but one were found with a second batch of classified material at his private home in Delaware. The White House confirmed the files included US intelligence memos from his time as vice president under Barack Obama. The first batch was discovered in one of Biden's offices at a Washington think tank last November. He says he is fully cooperating with the US Justice Department. Russian mercenaries are claiming they have found a body belonging to one of the two British aid workers missing in Ukraine. The Wagner Group hasn't specified which of the two has reportedly been found, but did say they had documents and passports belonging to both. GB News is unable to verify those claims, and the Foreign Office says it's meanwhile supporting the families of Andrew Bagshaw and Christopher Parry while they await more information. Meanwhile, Ukrainian authorities say Russia has attacked a maternity hospital in the port city of Kherson. Video footage shows the aftermath of the strike with heavy damage to windows and offices. There have been no confirmed deaths. It comes after President Zelensky praised the resilience of his forces in the eastern Donbass region. The singer Lee Ryan has been found guilty of racially aggravated assault. The incident happened on a British Airways flight last July. Ealing magistrates in West London heard the former member of the group Blue also asked a female flight attendant to kiss him. The former pop star has apologised for his behaviour. An energy watchdog says more than 3 million people in the UK ran out of credit on their prepayment meters last year. Citizens Advice says more than 2 million were being disconnected at least once a month, leaving them unable to turn the heating on or cook a meal. The charity is calling for a total ban on the forced installation of prepayment meters until protections are introduced. More women will be able to get checked for breast cancer after the government announced £10 million in funding towards NHS screening units. The initiative will make screening more accessible for thousands of women, with 29 new units being set up. The investment will also see upgrades to ultrasound and X-ray units to better detect cancer using new and improved software. And finally, Chester Zoo has boosted its conservation efforts with a new arrival, a critically endangered chimpanzee baby. The baby boy is said to be in good health and has bonded well with his mother and the rest of the troop. He's only the fourth chimp to be born at the zoo in 5 years, but the first male in more than a decade. You with GB News. More news as it happens now. Back to Patrick.
OK, let's rattle through this hour then, ladies and gentlemen. Rishi Sunak outlined his key priorities for the government last night in his first party political broadcast as Prime Minister. He blamed the pandemic for the huge backlogs in the health service, whilst also pledging to repair the economy and tackle illegal immigration. Here is a brief clip.
Under my leadership, the government's priorities are your priorities, the people's priorities. Together, we're putting your needs above politics to repair the economy, strengthen our NHS, tackle illegal migration, and restore pride in the United Kingdom, our great country.
Good grief. GB News' political editor Darren McCaffrey joins me live now from Westminster, an increasingly dark Westminster. Darren, those are Rishi Sunak's priorities. Whiz us through them quite quickly, please.
Well, at least it stopped raining here, Patrick. But yeah, you're right. These priorities he set out for the year, essentially, in fact, probably for the rest of his premiership, focus around things like trying to get inflation down, though many would argue that is going to happen almost irrespective of what the government does as energy prices, which have been the most significant factor, continue to fall. In addition to that, the small boats crisis, he continues to say that is one of his number one priorities. Interestingly, he is going to travel to France in March to meet with President Macron. Clearly, he feels that France is a big part of trying to solve that problem. But again, in the end, is he managing to going to get this target what is the target? Is it zero number of people crossing the channel illegally? And then when it comes to the NHS, the backlogs that we're seeing in the National Health Service post-pandemic, the government say they are making progress, and some figures today seem to suggest they are, Patrick, with the number of elective surgeries up on the same month, December, as in 2019, pre-pandemic. So some progress does seem to be made, and I'm sure that will continue, but it is a hell of a big backlog. And again, Labour would question, is his desire, is his ambition to get those numbers in terms of the backlog inside the NHS back to pre-19 levels, 2019 levels, or to 2010, because there's a big difference in those. And all this, of course, at the same time where we see that continued pressure on the NHS and those strikes which seem or show no sign of abating.
No, so he's got a long road ahead of him. Darren, thank you very, very much. Oh, just quickly, Darren, we did cover a little bit yesterday about Andrew Bridgen, and he was having the whip removed, suspended from the Conservative Party. He basically said, essentially anyway, that the vaccine thing was one of the biggest scandals, biggest aberrations to human life since the Holocaust. What's the latest? I believe that he's issued a bit of a statement, has he?
He has, and he's apologised effectively, saying today that if anyone is genuinely offended by the use of imagery, then I apologise for any offence caused. He says he is not a racist, he's not anti-Semitic, and he is apologising for that language, but in the end, he's also not going to step away from what he says are genuine questions about the use of vaccines. He says I've consistently maintained there are very reasonable questions to be asked about the safety and effectiveness of the experimental vaccines and the risks of the benefits of the treatment. Now, it must be said, of course, he is in a very, very small minority with that view. Most medical science, and indeed most of his colleagues, the vast majority of them, would disagree on that. He says he's going to continue to raise those questions, but on that point, what many of his colleagues wanted him to do yesterday was apologise for that reference about the Holocaust. He has done that today. The big question, of course, politically for Andrew Bridgen is, will that be enough to have the whip restored? We'll have to wait and see, really, what Conservative Party headquarters have to say about that.
OK, thank you very much, Darren. Darren McCaffrey there, our political editor in Westminster. Now, one of the Prime Minister's main pledges and his top 5 priorities is, of course, tackling illegal immigration. He says the government's deploying hundreds of new agents to stop illegal crossings of the Channel. Sunak also said that people who arrive in the UK illegally will not have the right to stay and will be removed.
It's simply not right that people come here illegally. It's unfair on those who follow the rules, on those who really deserve our help. And above all, it's unfair on British taxpayers. It must stop. Under my government, it will stop. We're taking decisive action already, deploying hundreds of new agents to tackle immigration criminals, putting an end to the appalling situation where taxpayers are paying to keep illegal migrants in hotels. And we're introducing new laws that make it unambiguously clear that if you come to our country illegally, you will not have the right to stay and will be removed.
I think it's the passion that gets me with Rishi. I'm joined now by Conservative MP for South Thanet, Craig McKinley. Craig, great to have you on the show. Look, unfortunately for Rishi, whilst I think maybe his heart's in the right place there, I did speak to a top officer at Border Force about an hour ago who told me that if this undocumented migrant situation continues, you can't remove them because there's nowhere to remove them to, and putting more British Border Force officers essentially in and around the Channel will just make it easier and quicker for people to come here. Your views?
Well, it all depends where these agents are going to be based. There was something of an agreement following the PM's meeting with Macron last month before, to actually allow British boots on the ground to actually oversee what is happening there. That has got to be, I mean, it's what I've been saying for months. None of these boats that arrive or are picked up at the median line by the RNLI and Border Force have just appeared from nowhere. They have been launched from a French beach. And to me, it seems to be the most obvious thing to do is to stop the launchings, because it's the launchings that are leading to, those dangerous passages. We saw deaths last month. We saw a lot of deaths last November, in November 21, and that's got to be stopped. Each and every one of these are launched from a French beach. It's an advanced nation. We've offered them all and every help that they possibly need. If they need more assistance, that is the way to stop this. in a fortnight, because if people who are spending 4,000 or 5,000 euros realise this is a route that no longer works, then the route will stop. I mean, something similar happened in a way, tough action happened around Calais to actually strengthen Calais some years ago. You know, oodles of millions of taxpayers' money was spent under the May administration to stop the back of the lorry route, and it did work. It did stop that route. So we need a similar idea to stop the beach launchings. But that's not to say there's not stuff we could do ourselves, because I pointed out in the House a few weeks ago that the likelihood of a yes, after going through a long and tortuous assessment period where you're going to be put up in a hotel at enormous expense, is 76% at the end of our process of claiming asylum. In the EU, the average is 14%. So I don't particularly need the ECHR to be changed, you know, tempting as that is. I don't need any reinterpretation of the 1951 Refugee Convention. I just want us to interpret it in the same way as the rest of Europe, would you believe? Because I'm quite happy with the 14% outcome. I'm less than happy with the 76% outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the moment, the chances are, if you can just get in a boat somewhere around the Calais area, the chances are that you will be given a life in Britain, and no doubt at massive taxpayers' expense as well. Do you think Rishi actually seriously wants to sort this out? Has he not set people like yourself up for failure here? Because he said, we will stop the boats. I will stop the boats. We will start removing people. Well, all of his predecessors said that, and they didn't do it. And he's asked to be judged on that at the next election. You live in an area, South Thanet, that is being disproportionately affected by this stuff. If Rishi gets it wrong, are you out of a job?
Well, he's given, you know, a commitment that please judge us on this. I'll be holding his feet to the fire on this one. I have to, and so do other colleagues, because this is, as we all know, a very, very big issue. Obviously, we're talking about other things at the moment. We've got strikes and NHS issues, but this is a perpetual feature of my inbox where people cannot understand how we have Queen Elizabeth-class aircraft carriers can, you know, patrol anywhere on this planet, but we can't seem to stop a few dinghies coming across 22 miles of channel. It has to be stopped. And, you know, the other feature of this, Patrick, is because of the long period of processing, we have people put up in hotels for very long periods of time. And increasingly, myself and colleagues are having these threats of, you know, hotels that should be key and part of our tourism offer and everything else being taken up for long periods by asylum seekers who are generally male. They're not allowed to work, obviously, and one wonders what they're going to do with themselves during the day.
Yeah. Well, it is a visible feature. It is, Craig. And I think now more so than ever, given the cost of living crisis, people want value for money from their government. And at the minute, we're hearing various different things, like we've got a blank cheque for Ukraine. We're also hearing now the taxpayer-funded hotels, left, right and centre for these migrants. They could come over here and live in four-star hotels, and we're all paying for it. We're also talking about potentially tax breaks for people over 50. We're talking about the idea now that disabled people can still get disability benefits and come into work as well. We've got the French have been lobbed millions, tens of millions, probably hundreds of millions over the last few years to not police their own beaches. Rwanda is paid for, supposedly. We're not seeing that money again, are we? I mean, is this government just lobbing money everywhere and getting absolutely no results?
Well, you know, the Rwanda policy, I never thought was the perfect policy, but when you're lacking in tools in the toolbox, you tend to try and use one that might work. The Rwanda policy is one that might work because we don't seem to be able to stop the beach launchings. That's outside of our control. The operation of the ECHR, outside of our control. But hopefully the Rwanda policy, if it comes to fruition after it's done all its legal process that we've been very frustrated with, if that is showing people that if you come to Britain, you might find yourself in Rwanda, you might find that many will say, well, I think I'll stick in France or Germany or Italy or Spain or wherever else they've come through on the way forward. But let's not forget, Patrick, you know as well as I do, France is a safe country.
Oh, perfectly safe. Well, I'm going on holiday to France next week.
Should not be risking coming across the channel.
No, Craig, I'm on Saturday. I'm, all being well, going on holiday to France. It'll be interesting. I can report as to from the war zone. I can be a war correspondent in France by the looks of things, and maybe I will have to flee that particular place in a dinghy across the Channel. Craig, we'll have to wait and see. But can I just ask you a question? If we start to get months away from the next general election and the boats are still coming, and Rishi Sunak has failed to deliver on his promise, would you be talking about, Rishi, we've got to now turn these boats back?
Well, I've been saying more robust things for the past year, Patrick. I've said we should, if we're not getting cooperation with the French, just simply put them on a border force boat and steam them back into Calais and say, well, the deal was we've given you tens of millions of pounds to stop these beach launchings. These are the few that you obviously missed yesterday. This is the deal that you signed up to with us, and it hasn't been fulfilled. So we're just helping you along to fulfill that contract. I'm afraid it might be that is the only solution left. It's high octane, I know, but I'm willing to do it. And quite frankly, politically, it's something we've got to examine all.
I think, Craig,
we cannot have this situation.
Yeah, you might have hit the nail on the head there, actually, which is it could be bracketed as, here are some people that you missed. We understand that as the French people, you want to fulfil your contract with us as well as you possibly can. This must have been some mistake. This must have been some mistake. Here you go, we'll help you out. Craig, maybe that's the way around it. Thank you very much. Always appreciate your time. Good luck to you. Craig McKinley there, who is Conservative MP for South Thanet. Right, the Health Secretary has been warned by doctors' unions that he must address the workforce crisis at a meeting earlier today where Steve Barclay discussed pay and working conditions. Medical leaders said he was given a very clear message that it would not be enough to focus on next year's pay settlement without a shift on current wages. So it says 1 in 10 people were left waiting for ambulances for more than 3.5 hours after falling seriously ill, with the likes of heart attacks, strokes, sepsis, etc., as response times fell to the worst on record. With me now is Lucy Johnston, Health and Social Affairs Editor at the Sunday Express. Thank you very much for joining me, Lucy. Lucy, can I ask you, I don't see how increasing the salary of an ambulance driver by even 10 or 15% makes it more likely that they should get to an emergency incident on time.
Well, I don't either, but at the same time, there seems to be a sort of standoff by the Treasury, which needs to sort of stump up the money, and the unions. And the more the talks aren't being constructive, the more we wait and the more patients are being put at risk in probably what is the worst NHS crisis in history, or at least one of the worst. So it's not just about pay. If you talk to staff, they are, a lot of the work that they do does rely on goodwill. That's why they're going to the job. And I think a lot of them are fed up with the conditions, which are down to the unsafe working practices. The NHS is in a terrible state. OK, so I think I agree with you completely on the idea that if people are happy to go to work, then they're more likely to work and less likely to be complaining all about pay. I do understand all of that. What can be done to increase the working conditions to make them more preferable in our NHS? Because it can't just be about the pay. There's got to be something else to it as well. If you look, there's a number of things that we've talked about, but I think probably the biggest problem in the NHS is about capacity and the delayed discharges or bed blocking, and that is the real issue there, and that needs to be fixed. Throwing money at it and putting people suddenly in hotels and trying to put them in care homes all of a sudden, which has been, a recent move, is not going to fix it. And so until we really grapple with that problem and perhaps even put the NHS, which takes about £160 billion a year, and the social care sector, which only gets about £30 billion a year, until you put them together, there's going to be no vested interest in them really working together. Yeah. It's like an engine and a gearbox. They need to work together.
Well, Lucy, I find this, and whenever I talk to representatives from the BMA or junior doctors or nurses or ambulance workers, there seems to be this almost bizarre, warped view that everything that we've got at the minute is terrible, but everything that we've got at the minute is sacred. So we can't actually have the kind of radical change that we need in our NHS, which is why when I say to people, well, you're training over here now at the taxpayer's expense, using a student loan to become a junior doctor, and then at the first opportunity, you're moving to Australia. And now, as I understand it, I spoke to a guy from the BMA earlier. He told me they don't have to pay that loan back, which sounds a bit cheeky, to be perfectly honest with you, as far as I can see. I'm not sure the British taxpayer will be that happy about that. But why don't we just copy what the Australians are doing then, if they're all moving over there?
Well, I mean, I agree with you. The NHS, it's like a cult, isn't it? And you can't have a conversation, it's a red line, about completely reforming it or changing it. But it was set up, as we know, in 1948, and it was set up for a population that was born in the 19th century, and it doesn't work anymore. So we need to move beyond this, and we need to have serious discussions. That doesn't mean to say we need to have a private health system or any other particular system, but it doesn't work at the moment. So we need to change it radically.
Lucy, just very finally, is population growth the elephant in the room here? We don't hear enough about this, I think. You know, gosh, we've got so many more people using the NHS. Where have they all come from?
We have got population growth, and at the same time, I think there's been over a 50% decrease in beds over the last 20 years. And it's not so simple to just say more beds, because we haven't got the infrastructure to put them there, and we haven't got the staffing to look after the people in beds. But if we can sort out people before they get to hospital in the communities, if we can have a better GP service, then we can catch them before they fall, in inverted commas, and they won't need to go to hospital.
Absolutely. Social care is certainly needed much, much more efficiently than it is as well. And it's almost as though we didn't...
GP care. Yeah,
and GP care, yeah, absolutely. And it's almost like we didn't plan our infrastructure around rapid population growth as well as it. Anyway, Lucy, thank you very much. Lucy Johnson, Health and Social Affairs Editor of the Sunday Express. You're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Coming up, the Prime Minister has laid out his priorities, which he can be judged on at the next election, in a broadcast which bored the backside off the nation last night. He pledged to tackle illegal migration and sort out the economy. Do you trust him to deliver? I want to hear from you, the brilliant GB News viewers, next. And it's been reported some of Boris Johnson's aides completely ignored lockdown rules at a Number 10 party. Two couples were apparently seen by numerous witnesses becoming rather intimate with each other. Do you really care about this retrospective look back at lockdown restrictions? I suspect many of you wouldn't stick to the restrictions if they're imposed now. And we're going to be having a bit of a head-to-head debate as well on whether or not Prince Harry should come to King Charles's coronation. I'll be back in a moment.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere. Amazing! You see, amazing! You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel. Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful. Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
OK, people, a little bit of breaking news for you. As ever, the Home Office has deported 43 Albanian nationals from the UK. They include 6 people known to have arrived across the Channel by small boat. 27 foreign national offenders were also on board a charter flight back to Albania that set off today. They've been convicted of drugs and weapons offences, classic, robbery and fraud, with combined sentences of over 66 years. Just very quickly, another recap of that, because it is just breaking. So 43 Albanian nationals have been deported from the UK, which did include 6 people known to have arrived across the Channel. So something is happening. We do have a returns deal with Albania, and at least something is actually happening when it comes to that. What do you make of that, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, I know a lot of you will be saying, is it only 6, given the fact that we've had tens of thousands of people cross? In fact, something like 2% of the entire male Albanian population has managed to make its way to Britain in recent years. But, alas, it's at least a start. And Rishi Sunak, I suppose, can now point at that and go, I am actually delivering. There is something happening there, albeit relatively minor. But Rishi Sunak addressed the nation last night. In his first speech as Prime Minister, he did pledge to tackle inflation, NHS backlogs and, yes, what we've just spoken about, illegal migration. They were his top government priorities. Joining me now is GB News viewer. It's Coral Fordham. Coral, great to have you on the show. Thank you very much. Can I get your initial reaction to that breaking news there that at least six Albanian Channel migrants have now been deported?
Well, yes, it's great news that they're doing something, but it is a key in the ocean, really, isn't it? I mean, and why has it taken so long to do anything, is obviously the other question. But yes, it's good. I mean, let's hope that's a start of many more they're sending back. Who knows?
Yeah, indeed. And when it comes to Rishi Sunak's priorities there, which he outlined again in that rather boring, I think, to be fair. But anyway, we'll give him a little bit of a break. A statement that he made us all sit through last night. Tackling inflation, so the economy, we'll just call that the economy, NHS backlogs and illegal migration. Of those 3 priorities, what's your priority?
That's a really difficult question. I listened to him, and it's lots of words. But the interesting thing, he started off saying, I know how tough this winter's going to be. He has no idea how many of us are sitting cold and miserable at home. So obviously there's the energy side of it. Inflation, you know, you go to the shops, he wouldn't understand any of this. He wouldn't know the price is going up. Would he know how much, or even where to get a loaf of bread? I don't know. The NHS is in crisis. And I notice as well, I've written it down here, I will not let you down. It's as though he is nothing to do with the Conservative Party. He has been brought in to put everything right. But who has been in power for the last 12 or 13 years? Who is responsible for the inflation? Who is responsible for the energy prices? We had options, but the Tories, unfortunately, have let us down. And he's got an awful lot of work to do to restore the confidence of people like myself who have voted Tory in the past, but there's no way that I could now.
Well, this is interesting. What he obviously wants to do is draw a line in the sand and say, OK, that was then and this is now, in Rishi Sunak's defence, which pains me to say somewhat, but, you know, he hasn't been personally in power for 13 years. Of course, his party has. He was Chancellor during the pandemic and all of this stuff. So, yes, certainly his hands are not clean when it comes to the state that this country is in at the minute. But can I ask you a little bit about what you think of his personality? Because by all accounts, from what I can gather, he's all right normally behind the scenes. If you walk past him in the shops, I mean, it'd have to be an expensive shop, probably where Rishi Sunak does shop. But if you passed him in the bespoke tailors, right, apparently he's actually quite good company. But in front of a camera, he's utterly shocking.
I would totally agree with that. I mean, let's be honest, Boris wasn't a great Prime Minister, but he was a personality. And that is something about our dear Prime Minister. He hasn't got a personality. He looks very smart, and he probably does go to bespoke tailors.
He does.
He speaks very nicely, very, very eloquent. But he can't... How can he possibly relate to the likes of you and I, who are living a normal life, and like so many other people? He is not super rich. He is beyond that.
I think he makes it... Now, I'm all for leadership. I do want to feel led. I think that the country needs to feel led. That's part and parcel of having a leader, right? We do want someone with direction, vision. But you don't want to feel ruled from on high by someone in an ivory tower. And I can't help but feel as though Rishi Sunak's got a little bit of a touch of that about him. I'm not sure whether or not QC Keir Starmer, the North London representative, is going to be too much better, don't get me wrong. But I do feel as though maybe there is that element of Rishi being a bit out of touch, certainly a bit stilted in front of camera, which you're certainly not, Coral, which is why I certainly would lobby to have you back on this show very, very soon. Coral, thank you very much, and good luck to you. Hope everything is rosy in Coral Fordham's world. That is GB News viewer there, Coral Fordham. Right, you can get yourself on the telly, by the way. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Be like Coral. Put in the subject line, put me on the telly. And one of my staff over there will... colleagues. Staff sounds a bit derogatory, that, doesn't it? One of my esteemed colleagues, friends, some would say, we'll get you on the telly. Anyway, enough of me digging a massive hole for myself. Coming up, the Prince and Princess of Wales visited Liverpool today on their first official outing since the Duke of Sussex's book was released. They put on a united front, but after all of the claims in Prince Harry's tell-all memoir, should the royal family welcome Harry and Meghan to the coronation? That's the story that we're going to be covering when I come back. Should Harry swerve the coronation? I'll be back after the headlines.
Patrick, thank you, and good afternoon to you. The government says a meeting between the Health Secretary and health leaders today was good and constructive. But that comes as new NHS England data shows ambulances took an hour and a half on average to respond to call-outs in the month of December. That's the longest response time on record. Details on pay weren't discussed in today's meetings, but Steve Barclay was warned he must address a workforce crisis. The Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry told GB News talks are the only way forward.
Much better, surely, is to use the system that we already have, which is that people negotiate the basic safety levels, and you can see nurses running off picket lines in order to go and help when there is a particular crisis. Now, that's the reality. That's what's always happened. And we know that even if they do pass this legislation, it's not going to help with the current situation. The current situation can only be helped if the government stops playing games, sits down and talks to the unions and negotiates a deal.
The Northern Ireland Secretary has said there's still a way to go to resolve the row over the Northern Ireland Protocol. And a warning, the following images do contain some flashing photography. The Irish Premier and the Labour leader met this morning, as well as meeting with other political parties at Stormont to discuss the post-Brexit trade rules on the Irish land border. The DUP has been blocking the formation of a proper government until the protocol is altered or even removed. Russian mercenaries are claiming they have found the body belonging to one of the two British aid workers missing in Ukraine. The Wagner Group hasn't specified which of the two has been reportedly found, but did say they had documents belonging to both. GB News has been unable to verify those claims, and the Foreign Office says it's supporting the families of Andrew Bagshaw and Chris Parry while they await more clear information. The singer Lee Ryan has been found guilty of racially aggravated assault. The incident happened on a British Airways flight last July. Ealing Magistrates Court in West London heard the former member of the band Blue also asked a female flight attendant for a kiss. The former pop star has now apologised for that. As you've been hearing, the Prince and Princess of Wales have appeared in public for the first time since the release of Prince Harry's memoir, Spare. Prince William and Kate are in Merseyside to officially open the new Royal Liverpool University Hospital. The two are meeting healthcare and mental health staff to thank them for their ongoing work throughout the winter months. Those are your headlines. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News, the People's Channel. We're back in just a moment.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you.
GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious, much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, since the publication of Prince Harry's bridge-burning exercise, reports suggest that senior royals are reluctant to host him and Meghan at his father's coronation, out of fear that private conversations might be leaked to the press. Also, dare I say it, possibly because they just don't like him. The Duke of Sussex did not hold back in his memoir, giving his side of the story and recalling many personal stories, a lot of them, by the way, in relation to a particular part of his anatomy, rather too personal, showing details as well about family feuds. Now, it's become unclear whether Charles will invite Harry to the coronation at all, or if Harry would accept the offer to attend. So, should Prince Harry be invited to the coronation of King Charles III? The noise is today they're saying that he was not going to be welcome, which implies he wouldn't be invited. Joining me now to share their views are journalist and broadcaster Sam Dowler and royal commentator Jenny Bond. Thank you very much, both of you. Great to have you on the show. Sam, I'll start with you. Should Harry be invited to the coronation?
I think he definitely should be invited. I mean, it is his father. No matter what has happened, he's still the prince. And the thing is, like, so I've worked with celebrities for many years, and selling stories is like the greatest fear. As in, like, oh my God, please don't tell this story, please don't tell that story. And the trust has gone in the family. The trust has gone with him, and the trust has gone with Meghan. You know, he thought there were leaks. He thought there were leaks all over the place. There might have been, but there's no proof of it. So he just leaked everything in response. Yeah. I think he should be invited, but I think perhaps a good idea might be to get him and Meghan to both sign an NDA. Otherwise, at the end of the day,
that's bleak, isn't it? It's bleak. Sorry. I agree with what you're saying, right? Because I think he's a bit trapped, King Charles, because he can't. Well, it's time for him to not invite him, but at the same time, how bleak is that? I would like to have my son at my coronation, but only if he signs this cast-iron, watertight NDA. I mean, it's not exactly great father-son relations. Jenny, regardless of whether or not Harry should be invited to the coronation, should he, as a matter of respect, just swerve it?
I think that I think he should do what he wants to do. I think he still has a great love for his father. I know they're terribly estranged at the moment, but I think if his father extends that hand and says, Harry, I would like you, or darling boy as he calls him, I would like you to be there, then perhaps he and Meghan should come, keep a low profile. The other members of the royal family will have to zip it, probably, because you're right, trust is gone, so they'd have to be careful. But I think that if an invitation isn't sent out to them, there's a great danger that the palace would be feeding the hand that keeps biting them. You know, it's more grist to their mill, isn't it?
Well, just on that, Jenny, just on that, sorry, I'll stick with you, Jenny, on this before I return to Sam, but do you not think, at the end of the day, the coronation, yes, it's a national event, but it's also a family event, OK? It's also, you could argue a little bit like a wedding or that kind of family-type event. And any family, I think, in the country right now who's just had a prominent member of that family absolutely slate you all in the most public of settings, I think most people would think, actually, fair enough for not inviting him, Jenny.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think he will be invited. They will be invited. I think the palace have got this strategy of taking the higher ground, the more dignified ground. We saw it today with William and Catherine out there being questioned, being fired at them. You know, are you hurt by what your brother has said? And he's ignoring it. It's the best strategy. And I think that's the way it will continue. And I think you are right that the coronation is probably the most important day in his father's life. And your son should be there, and I hope he will be. As Harry himself has said, there's a good deal of time between now and the coronation.
There is a good deal of time between now and the coronation. Sam, do you think if Harry does turn up to the coronation, people will boo him and throw rotting tomatoes at him?
In the grand scheme of things, I wouldn't call 4 months a good deal of time at all.
No, it's not.
I think this is supposed to be an incredible day. It's a great day for the country. It's an amazing day for Charles, as you said. I think if they all feel like they have to be tight-lipped, if Eugenie and Beatrice feel that they can't, make a mistake or say something about Andrew that they wish they hadn't said, all feeling nervous, I think that would ruin the day for them. But at the same time, I agree with Jenny. Like he should be there. I hope he is there. And also, one thing I will say as well is that he's actually speaks very warmly about his father in the book. It's not just all the pull quotes that everybody has seen. It is he does love his father very much indeed. So I think, but however, I know you just said about the booing. I don't know. I think if those two jump out the car and things are as they are now, you might well get boos from the British public. And that's not what they want on the coronation at all.
No, this is the other thing, isn't it? I just wonder, Jenny, whether or not the sensible thing for Harry to do, which is a bit of a misconception for me to say, because he doesn't seem to do a lot of sensible things, would be for the good of his own family to stay away. Is he that desperate to be involved? I don't know. But instead of focusing too much on Harry in this sense, Jenny, surely Meghan can make an excuse not to come.
Well, they have a perfect excuse. It is the birthday of Archie. It's his 4th birthday, and, maybe they've got planned a party over there. So they do have a legitimate excuse. But I do think the public and the press should actually stop being so outrightly rude about Harry, and I don't think that things should be thrown at them if they came, or there should be any boos. I've been spent the last 2 days, or the last week immersed in this, but the last 2 days listening to Harry tell his story, read his book, 12 hours of it so far, there's another 3 to go. And what I'm getting for the full context of the book is we are dealing here with a very severely damaged man, psychologically damaged, who is fragile still, extremely fragile, and needs to be protected.
So you think that we should all lay off him because he's quite psychologically damaged? Sam, do you think that we should lay off him, that if he gets out of the car there and instead of booing him, we should put our arm around him and just shout, get help, Harry?
I think that's 12 hours Jenny's never going to get back of her life. I do think that we should. I don't think anyone should boo them. I don't think anyone should throw sticky buns or anything like that. We are a country of goodwill. It will be the coronation, and everybody loves to forgive. It is not nice to still have a bone of contention with family, with anybody. And I would rely on the British people to be respectful and to not boo them, and to try and put the past behind them.
I've just got an image of Harry being covered in sticky buns now. Thank you very much, both of you. I enjoyed that. And good luck, Jenny, with ploughing on through the remainder of Prince Harry's audiobook. I mean, great.
I am enjoying it. It's very poignant.
Have you got to the bit yet about where he's talking about having frostbite and then also
I have.
reminding of his mum? That's weird.
I've got to the point where he's talking about when he went to therapy for the second time. I'm just at this point now when he felt that he couldn't confront the pain of losing his mother, because if he confronted that pain and lost that pain, then he might lose his mother again. I mean, you've got to have sympathy with the guy.
But William suggested he had therapy, though, wasn't it?
Yes, and he had therapy, and then that didn't work. So I've got to the second bout of therapy. Right. You're dealing with a mentally fragile man here. I do think we should not lose.
I do think, look, there are numerous different things to be incredibly sympathetic towards Harry about. Yes, he is damaged, but then also at the same time, does that excuse him of everything? Anyway, it's a good talking point. Thank you very much, both of you. Sam Dowler there, journalist and broadcaster, and royal commentator Jenny Bond. Now, lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts on whether Prince Harry should attend the King's coronation. I wonder if you've all adhered to Jenny Bond, royal commentator's advice there. We should all lay off Harry, be kind to him. David says, if you invite them, there's a book to be sold. If you don't invite them, there's a book to be sold. Yes, OK, well, I get exactly what you mean. Thank you very much, David. Great point there. A little bit like Rishi Sunak. What was it? I'll only promise what I can deliver and I'll deliver what I can promise. Do you have the same script writers? Ian says, if Harry was to attend the coronation, the security threat would be greatly increased due to his comments of killing Taliban fighters. He should stay where he is. I'm inclined to agree with you. There are loads of excuses, Ian, as to why Harry does not need to attend the coronation. Apparently it's Archie's birthday. Absolutely, you wouldn't want to ruin Archie's birthday, would you? He knows a thing or two about, you know, being absent and not having warm, present parents, unfortunately, and so maybe he could use that as an excuse. Also, of course, as well, the Taliban threat. Prince Harry, he couldn't have security. Would the British taxpayer pay for security on the day? If not, it would be far too dangerous for him and Meghan to come. What about the fact that the British public are, of course, all deeply racist, and it would not be good for Meghan to walk the streets, not safe to walk the streets. So loads of excuses there as to why he doesn't have to come. And Stephen says he should be invited to the coronation, but I would hope that he would have the decency not to attend. Yes, I suspect this is, Stephen, I think what most people would agree with. Given his behaviour of late, he might just have the gall to attend. And yes, yet again, Stephen hitting the nail on the head there. I suspect that he should be invited. I don't see how the palace can't really not invite him, but he should decide to refuse that, I think. Well, it remains to be seen. It'll just be a sideshow and a circus. And how sad and bleak and trashy is it as well that the idea that Prince Harry and Meghan might be made to sign an NDA before attending the coronation. You can't buy class, can you? It's been reported, moving on now, that some of Boris Johnson's aides were intimate at a number 10 gathering of aides and officials held whilst COVID restrictions were in place. The former Prime Minister has also come under fire for a joke he allegedly made about a leaving do, calling it the most unsocially distanced party in the UK right now. The reason why I'm talking about this, before I get a flood of emails telling me we've all forgotten about Partygate, is because it's rearing its head, new podcasts are coming out, new investigations coming out into it. Do you still care about lockdown parties? I'm joined now by political commentator Joe Phillips. Joe, you obviously still care about this.
I do, and I tell you, these latest allegations go a lot further than sticky buns. It goes into I can't get that image out of
I know, it's horrific, isn't it?
Great sale of sticky buns all over the country. So these allegations relate to a party in April in 2021, and it was the eve of the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral. This is a party that Boris Johnson didn't attend, apparently. But it was the one that went on until 4 o'clock in the morning, and various whistleblowers who've been talking to ITV, who've made the podcast, have talked about at least two couples getting intimate, as we say euphemistically. So I think, it begs the question. This is 6 months after the party in November, or less than 6 months, actually, in November 2020, where Johnson did attend it. And this is where he is alleged to have said, this is the most socially undistanced party in the UK. Now, as you rightly say, Patrick, it is important because the long-awaited Privilege Committee is about to finally start its hearings. It's been delayed for a number of reasons, not least of all the Queen's death, which put everything on hold for 2 weeks, but also because Liz Truss, remember her, her government...
Should we not all just move on, though, Joe? I get what you mean, but look, to be honest with you, it's not a massive shock to people, is it now, anymore, that Boris Johnson was maybe a little bit squiffy over socially distanced parties at Downing Street. We all get it. The nation needs to move on, Joe. We're obsessing over the past here.
No, it's about him lying to Parliament, Patrick, and that's the point. He stood in Parliament and on numerous occasions said that, he had no knowledge of anything that was going on at Downing Street. Now, he wasn't at the party in April 2021, but he was at the party in November. He's already told MPs on the floor of the House of Commons that, no rules were broken, and he was very sorry, and he's, continued to say that everybody was doing the right thing. Downing Street, incidentally, have not denied these claims that have come out in the ITV podcast today. And whilst we might want to move on, there's an awful lot of people within the Conservative Party who think that Boris Johnson might save them from electoral defeat. And I think this might just remind them why he needed to be got rid of. And actually, you can't have somebody who has lied to the House of Commons. We know he lied to the Queen.
But is there a slight contradiction in terms there, Joe? Because if the Conservative Party, many members feel as though Boris Johnson might save them from electoral defeat, that's because a lot of ordinary members of the public would still vote for him, despite knowing all of this. And trying to block him from standing again is more of an affront to democracy than anything else, isn't it?
Well, no, absolutely. And it's to not block him from standing again, because when the committee reports, they're starting the hearings within the next couple of weeks. They expect to publish their report within 2 months, which is, pretty quick. And it's really then up to MPs, because this is a parliamentary inquiry. It's not a judicial inquiry. Yeah. It's up to MPs then to vote on what the outcome is.
You never broke a single lockdown rule, did you, Joe?
I didn't know.
Not a single rule ever?
No.
You goody two-shoes. You very goody two-shoes. OK, all right. You know what, actually, I do believe you, actually. I do genuinely believe you, Gisela. Joe Phillips, there, political commentator. Thank you very much. Sorry, Joe, I've got to go. I'm out of time, I'm afraid. Up next is Jubes and Co with Michelle Dewberry, who's here in the studio. What have you got coming up for us, Jubes?
Hello, Patrick. Right. Teachers, we've got strikes hanging over our schools at the moment, haven't we? What is the answer to this sector? Is it just more money? And I'm wondering tonight, do we value our teachers enough in this country? I personally wouldn't be a teacher for all the money in the world. I don't like people's kids enough, I've got to be honest. Mortgages, 500,000 people are apparently going to be getting into arrears, Patrick. So I'm wondering, should the government do more to help people pay their mortgages? Is that really their job? I want people to tell me their thoughts on that. And nepotism, should you give your kids, your nephews, whatever, a job? Is that advisable or not? Some people say the kids should make their own way in the world. Should they? And cash, apparently we are spending more of it now than we have been for quite a while, Patrick. Is this a good thing? I don't carry cash though, do you?
Only when my wonderful grandma gives me 20 quid.
Your grandma still gives you 20 quid?
She does, I can't stop her.
Oh, wow, I'll come round to your granny's house then, actually.
That's great. Yeah, she's brilliant. You'd have a great time. My grandma, I keep trying to convince her to come on GB News. She is absolutely fantastic. She should do her own show.
What's your grandma's name?
Angela.
Angela. Well, let's do a campaign. Let's get Angela.
Let's get Angela on GB.
And bring you 20 quid, Angela, as well, while you're at it.
She'll be watching now.
Oh, well, there you go,
I'll get a phone call in a second, yeah. Anyway, Michelle, thank you very much. All right, take care. I'll see you. You'll be on in a minute anyway. Michelle Dewberry there, Jubes and Co. What a rip-roar of a show that's going to be. I keep thinking it's Friday. I've just remembered it's Thursday. That's made me a bit miserable, but I'll see you in a bit anyway. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. Oh. Bye.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. It stays windy, especially windy tonight over Northern Ireland, parts of North Wales and North West England. Further showers to come as well. Turning a little bit drier as the winds slowly ease tomorrow. But low pressure is in control, and as these isobars are pinching together, it is getting very windy now across Northern Ireland. Very blustery this evening here, and there's strong winds that move across the Irish Sea to parts of North West England and North Wales through the night. Could cause some structural damage, certainly some disruption to ferry services, and those strong winds will blow in plenty of showers. The rain easing a touch, though, overnight across western parts of Scotland and further south, not too many showers. That strong wind stopping, temperatures dropping down to freezing. Most of us start at about 4 or 5, but it will feel cold in the wind on Friday morning. Plenty of showers to come on Friday morning for Northern Ireland, North West England and North Wales, along with northern Scotland, but many eastern and southern areas not seeing too many showers. And the showers tending to ease off in many places come the afternoon, although I think we'll always keep some coming into southwest Scotland. Some sunny spells lifting the temperatures to around about average or a touch above in some spots, but it'll feel colder because of that wind. So a chilly feeling Friday. More rain then comes in during Friday evening, initially into the west, but look at this, another batch of heavy and persistent rain swamps in across the country to start the weekend. So a soggy Saturday morning. There'll be some snow on the hills across parts of Scotland, clearing from Northern Ireland perhaps during the morning, and then the rain should spill away reasonably quickly during the afternoon. So turning a little bit drier, but there'll be more showers following on behind, and it will be windy. Early in the day we could get up to 11 or 12 Celsius, but temperatures probably dropping as that rain clears through the afternoon. And that is a sign of things to come. Mild air for a time on Saturday, but look at this, the map's turning blue. Colder conditions arriving for next week with the return of frost and ice.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you.
GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watch